How you guys doing, everybody? Welcome on into the good old episode of the Jazz. Don't look at that. But I hope everybody's doing all right today. Welcome on in. We got another episode of the Antiperfectionist Podcast going on today, and I would like to go ahead and introduce my lovely co-host, Eyes the artist. How you doing, Eyes? How you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing? I think. Oh, there you go. Now you're not deafened. Now I can hear you, and it's not. Okay. Well, anyway, my name is Eyes. I'm a music producer. I've been making music for about 18 years, going on 19. I'm a mixing and mastering engineer, and I am on the internet, other areas. I'll give myself a shout out
I'm
right
on the
now.
internet. Yes.
There, you can start by checking me out there at twitch.tv/I the artist, and my links are in the about section for my Twitter, Instagram/X, and Spotify. Good to have you guys here. Thank you for being in the show today. We're with a very special guest named Bordebeats. Why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, for those of you, or for those who do not know?
Sure. I am Bordebeats. Uh, make music. I'm a dad, a new dad. I got a 14-month-old kid. That's a big part of my channel. Is talking about that and sampling him to make beats. Proud member of the Anti-Perfectionist community, and yeah, I stream a bit, make some music. I play Rocket League. I don't know. Not super prepared on that intro. Could use some work, but I think I covered a lot of the bases.
You're good. You're good, bro.
Yeah,
Well, thanks
Bordy.
for being on the show.
Yeah,
Happy to
Bordy,
have you
he's
here.
one of the OG members of the anti-perfectionist community, one of the very first when we started this community
Hmm.
a long while back. And the fact that he's still with
Yeah.
us and still doing great things is really amazing. And so glad to have you here on the show, man.
So good to be here. I feel like I would say I'd like to say the anti-perfectionist community found me, but I think that actually just is the truth. Like I think Eyes found me, like in my stream, popped in, and then I was just like, oh, then we hit it off, and the rest is history. So
Yeah. Yep. I typically find people and end up chatting with people whenever I'm like, oh, I like the stream. So big dub. Happy to hear it. Your camera is all
I know
blurred
I
though.
that's this happens every once in a while. I'm like, usually I have to like maybe I just gotta like get focused on this Pikachu real quick for a second. So you know. This happens here. It'll slow. Hey, look, it's slowly coming back into focus.
A
It's
little
like
bit
taking
at a
its time,
time.
just
Yeah, it's taking its time. This is automatic focus,
All right, while we get that going, Prominent, you want to kick us off, or you
I
want me to
do.
kick us off?
What I do wanted to start off simply with you, Bordy, is just what was it that got you into producing? What was it like? What was that musical genre that made you want to sit there and think like, huh, I really want to try to do something like this?
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. I don't know if it was like a specific genre or anything necessarily, but I think getting started with production software in general kind of stemmed from necessity in a way because I grew up playing guitar and I was always in bands like in high school and then in college, so it was like I was a lead guitarist. And the way that it generally worked for me is I would show up to band practice. I would generally not have a lot of things like and a lot of context, and I would just hear what our singer-songwriter, kind of put together, and then I would just jam out over and over again, practice the songs. And so what ended up happening was I would just like kind of just jam over things, like create lead parts and things like that. And so when I left my band, I felt like I wanted to be able to play guitar and noodle around over things, and that's when I started, getting into Ableton, and yeah, I think that's kind of what really got me into it. I think as I started listening to more like I've always listened to a lot of like rock and stuff like that, and variations of rock, broadly. But then I also listen to a lot of hip hop and stuff too. So I think putting that together has kind of been how I've gotten more and more into like producing and like tried out different things within, that world. But yeah, I don't know if
Yeah,
that
because I
answers the
know that
question, but
based on like the streams and stuff that you do and all the stuff that I've seen you with everything, like you tend to lean more towards like lo-fi hip hop and more like chill vibes, things like that. By the way, if you guys don't know,
yeah.
Bordy, he does have a song out on Spotify and other platforms called Nostalgic Pressure,
I'll
which I
put
was
that in the
bumping it
link.
earlier today
I'll
and
put
it
that in the
was
chat.
it was lit as hell. I love it, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it's super chill. Yeah, I definitely I think gravitate towards I gravitated towards that style of music over time. I think part of it is just what I had been consuming for a long time. I think I always think it's funny because I kind of messed up all my Spotify wraps for a little while because there's a time period for like a couple of years where I kind of stopped listening to music in the way that I used to, which was really hunting down artists, like listening to similar artists and like just trying to find new artists and things like that all the time. You know what I mean? And I think when chill hop radio came into existence and I started kind of putting that in the background, it just kind of became habitual where like I felt like I couldn't live my life day to day without having music in the background. And it was always a different listening experience for me to like, I don't know, I like when I listen to certain artists, I tend to go down the rabbit hole. I like
Oh
reading
yeah.
about them. I'll like read about their history, like check out their Instagram,
Oh
check out all
yeah.
their stuff, things like that. And yeah, I think it was a new kind of experience to me when I started listening to chill hop and lo-fi because I guess fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know how it works out with the lo-fi artists themselves, but it's like it all just kind of becomes for me. It became like nameless, artistless vibe, and it was just like a way to listen to music where I had a vibe going on, and it was nice to kind of experience that. And so I think when I started I would a lot of times also pick up a guitar just kind of noodle and jam over those beats because they're like repetitive in a way that there's not a lot of changes. It's hard to noodle around when I don't know my scales and stuff like that. When when they like a lot of changes, like jazz would totally screw me up. But like in a lo-fi beat, you're talking about 2-3 minutes usually of like one set of one chord progression, maybe like not too many changes, and then so maybe I noodle around, mess around for the first 30 seconds to a minute, but then by then I've kind of got the fretboard mapped out at that point. I'm
Like you
like,
pretty
oh,
much
now I
got the
can
whole
just
song
kind
at
of
that
jam.
point. It's just like, oh, I got this. Okay, easy.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that kind of just naturally happened when I started finding ways to make lo-fi beats, and then I always just liked sampling. I always thought it was fun to sample things that were not necessarily designed to be music or something, make that into a beat and then just jam guitar over it. And that's kind of, I think that's why I found myself doing more and more of that when I'm like, when I'm streaming, popping in to Ableton and working on music. That ends up being kind of what I go for.
I can definitely relate when it comes to like getting down in the rabbit hole of music because that's what happened to me when I started like really listening to jazz and stuff like that. Like, because before it was just, I guess, background music for me as well.
Mm.
And like, I started to like really like get into like, I was like, okay, this is actually starting to sound interesting now because I was actually like understanding what I was listening to in a way. And then
Yeah,
once I started to understand it, I started to dive real deep into it, like getting into the jazz history and like, well, what is this artist's history and things like that. And like, once I like really learned, I was able to really understand where their playing was coming from. And like with lo-fi in a way, I can kind of understand where you're coming from too. It's like with lo-fi, you don't really hear about much artist wise, but like a certain song at the end of the day,
hmm
And it's just like when it comes to lo-fi, it's like, oh, you know that vibe right there because it has like that certain type of piano, those certain types of chords in there. So it just
hmm
with lo-fi, I guess it's like you can tell, but like besides jazz with the artist, you can tell by the artist and how they're playing. With lo-fi, you can tell by the vibes and how they choose to map their instruments, etc.
It's true. Yeah, and I feel like some lo-fi is kind of like certain instruments find prominence. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
is
I see what you
prominent.
did there.
But yeah,
I
like the
heard
whether
that.
it's like guitar or piano or Iwi or something, that's it's interesting though. Like I'm curious for you guys if there was like kind of the question back at you if it was like I know jazz has been a big part of it for you prominent, but like did you start out listening to jazz before you picked up like trombone? Was that your first instrument? I know you said you like started playing in school like earlier on, like in your life. Was that like you were in band and then you got more into that type of music, or were you in it and you were like, oh, I want to like learn an instrument or I want to learn to play trombone or whatever.
I feel like yeah, you're probably right in terms of when I first started in band around like fifth, sixth grade. Yeah, I started out like in the classical area, of course, because that's where everybody
Mm,
usually starts out in band. And then like that first year I was in middle school when I started. At some point I ended up moving to a different school, and around that time, like halfway through, like I guess 7th grade when I was there, it wasn't really jazz that I was introduced to that got me into it. It was more so like R&B and old like soul tunes and things like that around that era. And that was mainly because when I was in 7th grade, my stepdad, he was actually good friends with the band director of the high school marching band there. And because of that, I was able to actually play with them. While I was only in 7th grade, like being in the high school marching band, which that really like pushed me like trying to learn trombone and stuff, because mind you, like 7th grade, I only knew trombone for 1 year, so I was like a complete rookie still. And that like really pushed me, and like the type of music that they played and stuff in that band was more like R&B, soul, like things like that, like Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder, like El DeBarge, like all that type of stuff. So that really like introduced me to that. So I got really like inclined to listen to that type of music more, which I really loved. And then the band director at the middle school, he was telling me, "Oh, you're starting to get a lot better and stuff like that. Why don't you consider joining the jazz band?" And at first, like me being in middle school, I was like, "Oh, I don't know, so whatever." And like, but then I decided, I was like, you know what, I'll check it out. You know, it could be fun. Funny enough, I went in there, and it was around close to the winter time, so we were playing like jazz, like Christmas tunes and things like that. And then just being in there, just for that one rehearsal, I realized how much more freedom jazz players have than like in classical band, because when you're like in a orchestra and symphonic band or something like that, most of the time you really have to like read what's on the page. Like you can't really steer away from that. You can't just like add your own things in there because it's like structured a certain way. You have to write it the way the director or the composer wrote it on the sheet, you know. But as with jazz, if you know the tune and you can play it in your own way, add your own personality to it, I would say, that makes it a lot more fun for me. I feel like with jazz, you're able to express yourself a lot more, you know. And that's why I was able to, that's when I really started like diddling a lot more with jazz and stuff like that, and started listening to it a bit more. And it was around high school when I really started to like listen to it and really get invested in it around that time.
That's cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I played in band in middle school, started playing flute, and it was kind of the same thing. I think you kind of go through the, you know, most traditional like classical songs, like all the easy, like, well, like not easy. I think they like transpose it down, right, for for newbies, but like
for all the people that are like just learning, like play like these 3 notes and there's a song right there, playing like hot cross buns and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And just like trying to get the chops down of like reading music and being able to sight read and stuff like that. It was just like, I think it was fun for me, but in the same way, I think when I started playing guitar, that's when things changed for me, because it was like I spent a couple of years playing uh flute actually, and then I switched to clarinet, which like looking back, I think the reason I always like look back at that and like think it's funny that I felt pressured to get out of flute because I was surrounded by females. And I think just being a middle school kid, like feeling self-conscious about like being like the like one of two guys like in flute section, I was like, dude, I got to get to another instrument. And then I went to like clarinet, and then I get to high school and I realized like clarinet was also kind of like maybe more males, but like still like a lot less
Mostly
than
like
the
women
brass.
and stuff. Like
It's just still mostly women compared to like the brass instruments and like drums. And I was like, dude, I gotta get out of here. It's like just such a weird feeling. But yeah, I think when I was like in the 6th or 7th grade, then our band teacher actually played guitar, and so he had a club, like a guitar club, and that's when I decided to play guitar. I was just like, oh, let me learn. I want to learn "Smells Like Teen Spirit" because I saw someone play it, and I was like, what? It looks like what? Like it was the power chord, right? And I was like, whoa, like that song is one chord, like you just move it, and like my mind exploded. And then I was just like, and then they were showing me tabs and stuff. I was like, they're just numbers, like that makes so much sense. Like, and I just ran with that.
You're like, this is it right here. This is my instrument.
I was like, this is it. Yeah, like guitar is it for me. Like And yeah, and then I think over time I've had bouts of, and you guys have both seen me with the struggle with like trying to figure out music theory stuff. But like, I think that all kind of stemmed from that. Was just like, oh, I can throw all this music theory stuff away. Like, I just like never looked back.
Right.
As much as I like want to, I'm just like, I always appreciate it so much. Like, when I see you working, or even I was like talking about this stuff, and you guys both play like keys and stuff. I've always wanted to play keys. I feel like that's like the baseline for like understanding music theory and stuff.
I feel like it
Um,
really is, honestly. Like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people that try to learn
Mm-hmm.
more music theory, they go towards more learning piano and keys because all the notes are like right there in front of you. So it's like you can really just like learn how like scales work and all that stuff. Like it's a really good basis to start on, you know?
yeah, it seems very visual. I started learning a little bit, and it's like it's just so yeah, like to your point, it's just there, and you can see like a full scale. It's like it just repeats. It's like okay, like I think I can start to see patterns. I think it's a little tougher to see those patterns like on a guitar or like in another instrument, especially like woodwinds and stuff, because it's like every note's got a different configuration. It's like it's not linear like a keyboard is. But
Right.
yeah, I'll get around to
Right.
it.
Did you have anything that you wanted to ask Eyes yourself?
To ask or add, either
Or
or.
both?
Well,
Either
what
one,
about you?
yeah.
What about you, man? Like, I know you have a
Yeah, I'm
background
actually
with
curious
like
about
guitar
yours.
and stuff like that too, but I don't even know if you started with keyboard. You said I think
I
I
did.
remember talking about that, but yeah,
Yeah,
what was that about?
I started with piano a long time ago. I don't know, I was actually when I was really young, but I remember writing my first song when I was 12, and it was a duet. Weird flex, but okay. Well, but after that, my dad kind of had his own homemade studio with a keyboard in it, and it was just a lot of production from there when he started to trust me to be able to use it and stuff. And it was very limited in voices and stuff, and it was very old school production. You didn't have an audio workstation in front of you. It was all done on a keyboard, so it was a synthesizer, and it was kind of confusing, but I was able to make it work. And I was writing a lot of pop music actually at the time because I was into Backstreet Boys, Evanescence, like NSYNC, all that stuff back in the day. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
things of my age.
Imagine Eyes going
And
around just singing "I Want It That Way" all day, just like
yeah, that is I
tell
still
that
me.
that was me
I love
too,
that
man.
song.
I
I
was
love
Yeah,
all
that
about
right.
song.
I
Backstreet
can't even
Boys
talk.
and
Like,
Sync. Like,
I honestly still to this day compare that song to Bohemian Rhapsody with how well it's written and how well it's done. But I know it probably doesn't even stand close to it. But to me, it's a pretty profound song the way it was written and composed. Everything was done. Maybe I was synonymous, but anyway, my brothers all played guitar. My dad played guitar. My mom was the only one who played piano, and then one of my older brothers ended up playing piano a little bit, but his main instrument was guitar. And I remember just not wanting to learn guitar at all because everybody else in the family was doing it, so I didn't want to do it at all. Didn't want to touch it. But I wanted to make rock music and kind of, start going to the side of Evanescence and Breaking Benjamin at the time, But I ended up just sticking with piano and learning that over time, and that actually made it really difficult for me to transfer over to guitar. When I started finding folk artists and stuff like that that used guitar, and then did want to, I let go of that stereotype that I set up in my mind. I was like, oh, I'll learn guitar. I want to learn, and finally did learn acoustic at some point, and then just more about 2 years ago, almost a year and a half, probably at this point, around there, picked up electric guitar, and now, since I put hours into it and practicing it, learning the scales, I thankfully understand the whole neck, and whenever I did start understanding the scales and stuff, I was able to finally merge the two worlds of piano and guitar and be like, these are two very different instruments. The way you learn them, the way they operate,
mm.
but it's guitar, I would say, is now my main instrument over piano, specifically electric guitar.
Did you
I
have like
love playing
full
it.
training with like piano? Like, did you like take lessons or like learn out of a book,
No,
like read music and stuff like that? Or
no, my mom ended up trying to teach me to read music, but I wasn't attached to it. I couldn't keep my attention on it. It didn't interest me, so I wanted to play things by ear or
mm.
learn or just write stuff instead. And we've tried a couple times to sight read and stuff, and I still know like some of the very 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 basics, but more or less it's just if I'm playing an instrument, it's usually to write, so I can write my own stuff and not learn other covers and stuff. It's just I just like to write.
Yeah.
But the first song I do kind of really remember severely learning or seriously learning was the Final Fantasy X song. The
Oh yeah, the Xanac
Yeah,
Land, or I'm not
yeah,
saying that right.
yeah. It's something like that. But
Like so, yeah,
yeah,
so beautiful.
yeah. My older brother learned it, and I started copying him and learning it too. And then after that, I really started writing more and more. So then I remember
Yeah.
it's funny. There's kind of a subject change, but looking at computers and thinking about how you could buy keyboards to connect to computers and stuff, I was like, no, that's garbage. You want a real keyboard, like a synthesizer. Like nobody's making music on a computer. That's stupid. And then when I finally got a
Back in
Mac and
my
I
day,
started messing, yeah, I know, right? I started messing with it, and I was like, yo, what? This is crazy. Then I finally got my hands on Ableton, and it was just I've never looked back.
Yeah.
It's everything.
I remember there was a time like I remember connecting on Skrillex like before we first met. It's like I remember seeing interviews with him where he was like trying to explain to interviewers that like you can make music on the computer. Like it was like that early in the process where people were just
Yeah,
like computer music is not real music. Like if you're not
yeah,
holding a
yeah,
physical
exactly.
instrument, it's not actually considered music. And it was just
yeah,
kind of like this new idea almost, which was crazy because like I think in Europe they had been like listening to techno and like they've been using synthesizers for like decades. But it's like in America, popular music didn't really accept like any kind of electric instruments or like digital music making, which is like
Mhm.
interesting, you know? I don't know.
The one thing that I think is interesting is people see scratch DJs as a scratch DJ, but I almost see it more as instrumentation as well. To
Totally.
be
I do
able to
too.
be on beat and just juggle multiple records is astounding. It's
Yeah.
insane. I see that as
Totally.
a almost as another musical instrument too.
I
It's
feel like
like
that's
live
the
sampling.
yeah, that's what I was about to say. Because like it's already wild. I always love watching people who are like live sampling like on like a what do you call it? Like on a MPK or something like
Like
that.
a
But it's
beat machine or something like that.
like a beat machine, things like the machine, you know, like on a push or whatever. But like I feel like doing it on with records is like a whole other level. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
It's like there's a
It's
whole other
astounding. It's
physical
crazy.
element to it that's just like so like challenging and to like know like where to queue up and stuff like that. Like
You ever see
I
they
don't
have
know,
tape on it?
wild.
They have
Yeah,
a strip of tape or different colored tapes and stuff. I'm
like they
pretty
gotta
sure
they
so they
gotta
know.
know like in their boxes too. It's like oh like okay I know what I want. And it's like you got to get that record, you got to put it out, you got to line it up, you got to, and then you got to like blend
Yeah,
it in perfect. You know, that's like that's magic.
yeah, yeah. I was trying to learn scratch DJing on CDJs a long time ago, but I
Mm.
realized that wasn't the route that I needed to take for EDM. So I stopped learning scratch. But it was kind of fun for what I was doing, but it wasn't actual vinyl, so nowhere near the challenge.
Yeah, I feel like the DJing stuff. I've always like to people like friends that aren't super like familiar with music and like the like making or you know like maybe they just like to just listen to music only and don't really know too much about like what goes on behind the scenes like trying to explain to people the difference between like when I say I'm a music producer and they think I'm like oh so I'm like I DJ I can like go to bars and do DJ it's like and trying to explain like the difference and stuff like that and I feel like they're like very different like art
Yeah,
forms, you know. And
it was
DJing is like I have a lot of respect for DJing. I think because but it's like a different thing than like the nitty gritty of going in and producing music. You know, as a DJ, I think there's so much more
vastly
of a
different.
human element. Like you have to be able like when I go and see a DJ and they have a great set, so much of it is their adaptability to like the crowd and the energy and the way they're mixing and stuff like that and their song choice. And I feel like that's what I appreciate when I see a DJ because I don't think I would like I would imagine that most DJs aren't going up there press and play on like an hour and a half like
No, there
Like
have been some who've
people
been
do.
caught doing that, and it's just like reprimanded to hell. It's like, don't
It's
people.
like you
It's
can't.
so
I feel like that's like I don't know. It's like interesting because like I feel like that'd be hard to like I don't know. I don't have experience doing that, but I imagine like I
Right.
feel like whenever I'm at when I haven't been to like a rave or anything like that in a really long time, but when I would go, it's like I feel like they were like controlling the energy and like kind of adapting
yeah.
based off of the energy of the crowd.
I
You
loved
know?
DJing. I loved it, and I remember when people would tell me that my transitions were good, I knew it was a bad set. It was like they were
Mm.
focusing on the transitions, and if someone tells you you have good transitions, it's like, oh, maybe they
But what
weren't that
about the
good. You know
song
what I mean?
though?
But
It's just
like,
like
yeah. So sometimes if you get a dance floor moving and then they just really are into it, and that's usually how you can tell you have a good set. But you have to know your spot too. A lot of people don't want to be the opener slot, so they want to play hard stuff and high energy stuff. And I used to be that way when I was beginning too. But over time, I ended up learning that I really liked opening and setting the mood, or being able to like kind of push the boundaries of opening, like on an opening set with something softer, but kind of pushing up the energy, like ramping it up a little bit. I felt sometimes like
Mm.
when I was opening, I had so much more flexibility, forcing myself to stay in a specific box. Like when you're the headliner, you can go almost anywhere, but when you're opening, you have to
Mm.
stay like
That's
chilled and
interesting. I
opening.
didn't
But
know
I
this.
still at the same time felt more flexible because I was like,
Is that something where like the headliners are like, "Hey, yo, like don't be going too high on the
oh hell
BPM.
yeah,
I don't want our
don't go
crowd
too
getting
hard
tired
hell yeah,
before
now.
you.
no,
Yeah, don't
a
go too
thousand
hard."
percent.
Chill
A
out,
lot
Really?
of
man.
I didn't. That's
a
wild,
lot of
man.
the time, if there's a resident DJ especially, they're in with the club pretty well, so they'll tell the club like this guy was good, this guy wasn't good, you know.
Mm.
So it's all, you have to play your part, and you have to do it for a long, sometimes a long time, until they start trusting you to be on that 10 o'clock slot. Then the 11 o'clock, which is like right before, that's like right before the headline set, and you can go pretty
Man.
hard at that spot, but you still are limited. But I honestly, I've had a couple headline spots and it was fun, but I really didn't like the headline at that much near the end of my electronic dance music career, because I didn't like dubstep and playing heavy stuff. I was at the end of my career in EDM, I was a house musician, a house DJ. I played a lot of bass house, heavier house, and mixed in with kind of like some trap stuff, and I really liked that. So depending on the event, if it were a beach party and I were headlining, that was able to fly a lot more. But if you're at a club,
Mm.
the club formats are a little bit different. They expect you to be pretty high energy with dubstep if you're at a EDM type of club. That was in San Diego at least. And I might be off on
That's
some things,
interesting.
but more or less this is the story of what it is.
It's like
So
totally different than like. So I remember when I was playing a lot of shows and like in my band, the band I was in was like a kind of like a pop punk band, I guess, you know. So it was just like
mhm.
we were mostly playing shows in LA and stuff, and it was like I just remember it was always trying to find well get have headliners reach out to us, but usually they were trying to find bands that were like similar to them, right? So it wasn't like an energy of like opener. Like openers were just like you're not as big and you're not drawing as many people to this show, so
No,
you're
but that's
paying
a
to play.
super, to
But it's
me,
like,
that's super valuable, because I was talking about that in
yeah,
my stream recently. Like I went to a Dance Gavin Dance show in August of last year. And Dance Gavin Dance is not, they're not crazy heavy metal. They're progressive metal or post hardcore, like, along the lines of the stuff I make. And
mm,
but some of the openers were ridiculously heavy. And I was like, this does not work. Like, this is, no, I don't like this at all. Like, I didn't come here to hear death metal or all this just
yeah.
cuss screaming.
Like it's like a missed
I like
opportunity, sort of,
dynamics.
right? Like I feel like
Yeah.
that so much.
Like,
I
I feel
always
like,
love going to a show and I find new music because it's like
yeah.
maybe it's not doesn't sound exactly like this band like that, but it's like similar vibe, but maybe something new that gets me
But a lot of people
excited.
do discover bands off of that too. So
Yeah.
it may not have hit for me, but it may have hit for somebody else. But I like cohesiveness in the bands to be similar. Like if they had Coheed and Cambria with them and Block Party, if like Block Party opened, I'd be like, oh heck yeah, dude, let's go. Like this is
Huh.
kind of a cohesive lineup, like British rock
Yeah.
going into progressive metal.
It'd be like a
or
triple
drama.
headliner situation. Or I feel
Yeah,
like
I know.
Dance Gavin
That's
Dance
like
might actually
naming.
be the openers for
I kind of think so too. Honestly, like Dance Gavin Dance would probably open for
It's like
Coheed.
reverse
Coheed's
order.
pretty
Block
big.
Party is probably even, I feel like, bigger than
Right.
than Coheed.
You know what? Yeah, yeah, probably. I don't know. Block Party is pretty big.
I haven't heard anything from them in a while, but
Neither have I.
they
I,
were they were
I
big
only
for. I
know
saw
their
them on a
Silent
Target
Alarm record.
commercial. Yeah,
Did
that
you?
that record. I saw them
Yeah,
on like
I
they had a song
discovered
on
that
a
through Guitar Hero and Tony Hawk's American Wasteland.
oh yeah, Guitar Hero. I found so many bands and artists from Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my
So I
god.
guess my next question would be segueing is reading. So one of the things we discussed earlier is that how the community has helped your mental health and what your kind of outlook is on things. Are you comfortable elaborating with like that kind of information on stream or?
Yeah, I mean totally. I talk about this. I've talked about this on my stream too. I think, I've had uh I I feel like I've been fortunate to be in a position to be able to go through some therapy, and I'm a huge proponent of it. I know it's not something that's available to everyone, but even if it's just a way to like share my experience, I think it's it's just something that's helped me a lot because I think what was going on for me, I kind of left my career to be a stay-at-home parent for a year. This was sort of the plan all along. So when my son
An
was born,
underrated job, by the way.
completely underrated, and probably like a lot of the reason, honestly, why I kind of found myself dealing with a lot of uh, like isolation, even like getting towards depression. I'd been depressed before, but I wouldn't say I got to that point here, and that's props to therapy. I think helped me a lot, kind of like find ways to get through it. But I've always been a very anxious person, and being able to identify that and do that through the stream, like a learning through the stream kind of led me down that way. I think some of the earlier things were even conversations we had where like I was streaming to nobody, right? And I was just basically crapping on myself the entire stream. I don't know if you remember that. And
Hmm.
you DM'd me and you were like, hey, like, and we had a conversation about like self-deprecation and that there's a humor to that and it's funny and it's great, but like at some point it's like can be awkward or like uncomfortable. And me going back and watching my streams just started like I was just like, dude, this is rough. Like it's just an hour of me talking trash on myself every 30 seconds, and I think there was a lot of just sort of reflection in that going like, man, like what's going on? And I started learning about what that means for my mental health in terms of like you start to believe these things. I learned
Yeah.
that it's actually like a blanket, like a comfort blanket you put on yourself when you're like anxious. You're like if I shit on myself harder than anyone possibly can and just throw myself down like that, then no one can hurt my feelings. Like no one can make me feel bad because I've already said the worst things possible about myself. And then you think you're comforting yourself and making yourself protected from that, but then what ends up happening is that voice in your head actually convinces you that that's the truth. And then
Yeah,
you're no
because like
longer,
everybody agrees that like
yeah,
at the end of the day you are your worst critic, or like the best critic or things like that. And it's like, yeah, other people
exactly.
can say things about you, but at the same time, if you're dogging on yourself, that's gonna hurt. That's gonna hit a lot harder than it is with what anybody else is gonna say out there about you.
100%. Yeah, I think having some of that, honesty to be able to like for eyes to be able to share that with me, for us to have conversations about that in the context of streaming, but also for me, like as I was figuring out my own isolation as a stay-at-home parent, and also the stigma was something that I kind of dealt with a lot being a stay-at-home dad. I think it's been cool to meet other people like Soundbites as a stay-at-home dad, stay-at-home parent for a while. Like I met other people on Twitch and stuff like that, and it's just like I think that's a big part of Twitch, right? Is finding communities and things like that. And
Hmm.
while I wouldn't say the anti-perfectionist community is like community full of like stay-at-home dads that make music or anything like that, like
know.
I think the music part of it is what I connected with. But everyone's like a good person and has this at least it's not just like toxic positivity. It's like everyone's able to be honest about where they're at and the challenges they're going through, but also help lift each other up and support each other through that. And like be like, not let's not ignore that, but also like let's change our perspective a little bit and like think
It's good that it's
positively.
not a trauma dump community either.
Yeah,
That too.
exactly.
Yeah, because and that's where I think, there's places in life for that, right? And that's, I think, friends, family, people that are close to you that can help with that, or therapy or whatever, self-help. And so I think, yeah, it's great. But yeah, to answer your question, it's like I think the last year I went through a lot, and I think music for me was a big saving part of that. And so being a part of a community that also pushed me to do things with my music, like, was inspiring, right? Just it's like it's not quite competitive, like we're not competing with each other, but and I think I've heard this in some of the other podcasts that you guys have had, but it's like talking about just see someone else post like they're releasing on Spotify, someone's working on this song.
Hmm.
It gets you moving a little bit. It makes you feel
Yeah.
like I want to have something to show too, or like I want to like it makes you just want to do things.
It's
And
like a friendly competitiveness in a way, you know.
I almost don't
yeah,
even see it that way though. Personally, it's almost like when I see you guys put stuff out there, I'm just like so proud that you guys are doing it and so happy to support. And I just can't wait to show you guys what I'm doing too, because like we're all kind of in it together, and it's just it's a fun. It is a motivator. I guess that's where the friendly competition thing would probably come into play. Like, prominent release something, I got to release something. But again, for me, it's almost like not a competition, but a fuel, like an inspiration.
yeah, I think that's what maybe both of us mean is like it's not competition necessarily, but it has like a similar kind of like
We're not like at each other's necks
push.
trying to like, but we're
Yeah,
like
Yeah,
motivating each other at the end of the day. It's like, just
but
like you
for
said, it's like,
some,
oh,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, it's just like you were saying, like, oh, this person, like, oh, do you release something? I'm like, oh, I kind of want to put something out there too, you know, but it's not like you put something out and I'm dogging on you for putting something out and then I'm gonna say, oh, I'm gonna do this better, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and it could be for some the viewpoint of a healthy competition. Like for prominent, it might be healthy competition. For me, it's like an inspiration, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. If somebody has that viewpoint, as
Yeah,
long as they
yeah.
keep it healthy, like prominent always does.
yeah.
I
I
think
feel
for
like if
me
I
you get
like
on
there's
to keep it
screen and
healthy
start
because I know
trash
that
talking,
I'm a competitive person at the end of the day.
I'm a
But
very
at the same
competitive person
time,
too.
I'm not over here like, oh, he released something, it's got this many views. I'm not sitting here just looking at him, just like looking at him like, oh fuck
Yeah,
you. I'm
yeah.
like,
yeah,
Yeah, I feel like for me a lot of times it's like some weird feeling of like, oh man, they're doing it. Like, and not that it's like they make it look easier, you guys make it look easier, make it look harder. Like, it's like it's just that I can do it too, you
yeah.
know? And it's like I think it a lot of times would have me ask myself like the question of what's stopping me, Like I put having something on Spotify on this pedestal that almost seemed impossible. I think that's part of the perfectionism thing. It was just I was kind of like, well, I'm gonna keep like making beats and I'm gonna share them on SoundCloud because SoundCloud is like the place people go to like drop demos and like get feedback and like it's not really official there. You can always,
Yeah.
it's like it's not real. It's on the internet, but it's kind of
Yes.
temporary. And so I was like, for me, I was like, I need to put stuff on SoundCloud. And once I have enough like confidence through the music I'm putting out on SoundCloud, then I could put it on this platform that is like the best platform. Like if you're on this platform, like that, you've made it sort of deal. And it's like I think I was putting it too high up on this pedestal where it was like impossible. And in some cases, it's like I would see people posting things on Spotify, and it's not like I'm thinking like oh my stuff's not there yet or my stuff is there and I should be able to do it too. It was just like again asking myself the question like what's stopping me right now? Like I'm done with this track. I feel like I'm not doing anything more to it. Like I've opened it so
Hmm.
many times. I've tried to. It's like anytime I have done anything to add to it or adjust, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. It sounds weird now. I like the way it sounded before, and then I just switch it back, and that was nostalgic pressure for me. It was just like like this song is so done. Like I'm never gonna like work on this again. It's my favorite thing I've made. Why don't I just put this on Spotify already? You know, and I think that was really the impetus for me. Like at the end of last year when I saw you guys posting stuff or putting stuff out. I figure it was like we gotta get. He's like getting stuff out before the end of the year, and then like that made me question too. I was like, dude, I've been doing this streaming thing for a whole year. I was like, I'm gonna get a song on Spotify. I'm like, how cool would it be if like the year of 2023 when I started getting back into music, started producing, doing all this stuff, that I had something on Spotify that said 2023. It's like, and that's why I like haphazardly. It seemed haphazard because I just kind of threw it out there, but again, like it was a track that I was like, I went through the tracks that I'd done before, and I was like, dude, I love this song, and there's nothing else I want to do with it. Like, there's a time where I need to just like let it go. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
like let it go.
Exactly.
And then something amazing happens and it
So
gets
true.
picked up by a playlist.
I know that was
Do you know that
surprising.
story, Prominent?
I don't.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, good. It's kind of random. It was like some. I've actually did some research into it, and it's kind of like a playlist where people pay to get on it, but part of what they do is they have one or like on they have a bunch of different playlists. It's like an aggregating kind of thing, but they have like one playlist where they grab like new releases on that day and they throw it in there for 24 hours. And then they have a platform where they like pay people to listen to music on their platform. And so there's a bunch of people listening to these playlists all the time. And so the idea is like that freebie playlist that they like threw me onto was essentially like it's like they're them marketing themselves because then, in 24 hours out of nowhere, I spiked up. I had like 600 something plays. And I was like, what
Mm-hmm.
the hell's going on? And I looked at it on Spotify and it was all from this one playlist. And I got all stoked. I went on to that, checked out that playlist on Spotify. I had like 100,000 like followers and viewers or something like that.
Oh man.
Um, and so like a bunch of people just like listened through that playlist, but then I already checked the playlist. I was like, I'm not even on here anymore. Like they just recycled that whole playlist every 24 hours. But of course, it got me to go to their website and then kind of go down like, what is this? And then that's when I learned like, oh, okay, well if you pay us money, we'll put you on these
Yeah,
other playlists
they
that
fish
give you
or
more
whatever.
plays. So they kind of fished me, but like I was like, shit, that 600 got me to a point where like now it's just like over 1,000 because my wife gave me like 250 plays.
Yes, bless.
Let's
Blessed.
But
go.
yeah,
Oh, that is awesome. I never
it's
knew
funny.
that,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I didn't know how it happened. It was definitely like an exciting moment because I didn't know what it was, but I also kind of was sketched out a little bit by, it, and that's why I started doing research because it was like it wasn't natural. Like all of a sudden I had 500 listeners in one day in the Netherlands or in Finland, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, that's interesting. Like I don't know anybody in the Netherlands. I have no friends there. Like, so yeah, but
I
that's when I
guess
learned
that's
about
the play is
that.
get on a Spotify playlist. That's what a lot of people want to do. But I
Yeah,
feel like if it happens naturally, that's the way it happens. Is like getting naturally put on a playlist.
Right.
That's
There's
yeah,
the
no
that's
way.
like
reason to really like force it, you know.
Yeah, I feel like
right.
anytime you really start trying to take severe control over your follower numbers and your amount of plays that you have and stuff, like, yeah, that stuff's fun to track and fun to have like high numbers on that stuff because it means that it's doing well. But if you just put your focus on just your numbers, you're losing sight of why you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah, it's
And
not
I
fun.
say that because I've fallen victim to that like 7 times in the past. I've
Oh,
done that
same
so
here.
many times, so many times.
It's hard not to think about that stuff with everything. So like whether it's streaming on Twitch or like I would feel that way for a while too, and
Hmm.
even still now I think, but it's easier to kind of just you realize how much better things are when you're just doing you and letting the numbers kind of follow it if they do, as opposed to like trying to
Yeah,
chase a number because then it's like you're not really having fun,
it's
you're
a
not really doing it,
yeah.
you're not
It's
really
not
doing you.
sustainable. It's not sustainable to focus on doing something just for numbers. It's complete because then you lose your I guess your mental ability to withhold or to make it through all those waves when it drops, because sometimes it does drop. But if your main focus is doing what you actually really enjoy doing, everything else is a byproduct.
Yeah, plus I feel like when it comes to focusing on the numbers, the more you focus on them, the less you end up worrying about actually trying to build a community, get to know your viewers, other things like that. And then if you're over here just focusing on the numbers and then you don't have any consistent people coming to watch you and enjoy your music and your stream and things like that, it's going to disappoint you at the end of the day. And all you're going to be sitting there thinking about is like, oh, my numbers aren't up. What happened to this? What happened to that? And it's just like, why did the numbers matter? Why did they matter to you in the first place? They shouldn't matter,
But there's another problem with numbers that I've caught myself too, is you lose, once you're used to having high numbers and you get hit with low numbers, you lose appreciation for those low numbers who have been there for you the whole time. So it's super important to always show gratitude to anybody who's been there the whole time. I think it's super important to me.
Natural growth too, like that sort of thing seems to be like, I feel like if you are naturally growing, like for example, if we're talking about like streams, right? It's like naturally growing your stream kind of coincides with the viewer count in terms of things you're doing to add to the stream, become a better streamer, stuff like that. Like you could pay to get a bunch of bot viewers, right? But which could potentially bring people in. And some people do that, but then are you even prepared for like having 100 random people raid you, and then like what kind of flavor do they have of you when they get there? Like, what the hell? Why are there like 700 people in here? Definitely bots. Like this is like this guy's lame. It's like, but it's like you kind of have to like grow your. I would think, and that's kind of how I've wanted to do it, right? It's like I don't want to be in a position. I'd be scared if someone rated me with like even 20 viewers. I feel like that's too many. Like it's like I think I like a smaller amount is more comfortable because it's like I'm still as a streamer, I'm still new to it and trying to get back to it. But it's like I got to a point where even having 3 to 4 people in chat at the same time was getting difficult for me to manage. And I was talking to you about it at some point, but it's like both you guys, it's like I don't know how to like how to do it. Like I'm like feeling all awkward, like I'm trying to like have multiple conversations or something like that, and I'm like also trying to do music or something, and it's like I feel like that's a skill that has to be learned through like having consistently 2 to 3 chatters for a little bit, and then it's like okay, I can get used to that. It's like before you get to a point where I don't know, I guess I'm beating a dead horse here, but you get what I'm saying. I think
I do.
Of, they go in parallel.
It's a point.
In a way,
it's a point that I've made in a previous episode. I don't remember which one, but let's just to keep it short because I've said it previously. Is everybody wants the immediate success and numbers, but
that instant gratification.
Me having wanted that in the past as well. This is one of the first times where I maybe it's because I'm 30 or over 30 now, and like I've been through it a couple times. I'm still young, right? But I at least have some experience to understand that how important it is to gain your bearings over the course of years and really, really genuinely build something, because then you're well prepared for if someone raids you with 30 people. It's like, okay, this is I've been through raids where I've gotten 7 people, 13 people, and now there are 30, and it's just like, okay, I've done my intro so many times and I know how to welcome these people in because I'm used to it. It's not like, oh, I have one viewer and then 30 people come in at once, and then you're like, what do I do?
Yeah.
You can't fake it till you make it. You know what I mean? Well, like to a point. Like sometimes I feel like that statement does kind of apply. Sometimes like it kind of works, but it's not in the term of bots and
Yeah, and it's certain
circumstances.
numbers. I think it's different with music and stuff like that too. It's because it's like it's an art form and it's very subjective, right? It's not like if you're selling a product, for example, right, and you're like an innovative tech company or something like that. Like you have a product that's differentiated in the market. Yeah, pay money to get that out there because it's a go-to-market strategy. Like you need to get people in front of it before a competitor rips you off and starts doing the same thing, right?
Right,
But I feel
exactly.
like it's like a totally different thing and that's like maybe a fake it till you make it thing kind of works because it's like it is worth paying, I think, for the marketing to get eyes to see your stuff. But I think for music, it's like it's subjective, and also people more and more because they have infinite options. Like I was talking to a cousin of mine who's like Gen Z, and it's like I always love hearing his like perspective because it's like very like they're the ones that are the generations the ones that are really using social media, all these things a lot. And he was telling me about how like so much of like people's connection to an artist is well beyond the music because you can find a lot of like unfortunately can find a lot of artists that probably sound the same and that are like similar and the algorithm can help you with that, right? But what makes people into super fans, makes people want to spread the word about an artist or makes people want to talk about the artist or like engage with them is actually like seeing them putting in the work, seeing their process, seeing all these different things that makes them. It's kind of like what you were talking about before, right? With the
Yeah, I was
stream,
gonna bring that up. Yeah.
it's like that's why then you're just like like this person's music means so much more to me now because of all the context. It's not just I listen to this music because the
Yeah.
reality now is we have a lot of options like to find new music, right? It's like
Hmm.
very saturated in that sense. If you were just like to close your blinds, like not see the person, not have any context and only judge people off of the music itself, like that's a hard thing to do. Like no one has the time to like listen to everything in that specific narrow genre. Like back in the day, we had like 10 choices because you either listen to K Rock, you listen to Power 106 or something. It's like there's what genre do I like? And then what artists am I gonna get fed? And then choose which artists that I'm being fed that I decide I like and go buy their CD. But now
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah, but
it's
like
a totally
subgenres
different
within subgenres of music. It's like
And I
totally
guess
yeah.
with my point to the fake it till you make it thing, it's not really when I said depend. I may have caught that I said you can't always fake it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there are situations, and I guess to add context to that, buying bots, buying followers, buying numbers for your music, that's faking it till you make it in an unhealthy way, in my opinion. What I mean is sometimes you have to fake it till you make it because you feel like you're in a little bit of what's called imposter syndrome. And that means you don't really know what you're doing, but people see you for what you're doing. You might not feel like you fit quite in with the style of music or you being even a producer or a filmmaker or whatever. You might not feel like you fit in with the crowd, but you're still doing it and kind of faking it as much as you can. Like you're still genuinely doing it, but you feel like you're faking it because you don't feel like you fit in. But eventually, you realize, oh, I'm fitting right in because I actually am this thing that I was trying to be the whole time, and you lose that imposter syndrome. So I guess it's not a fake until you make it, as in cheating. It's just you have to, even if you don't feel fit in, but you're passionate about it, just keep going. Just ignore the imposter syndrome, and that kind of ties into anti-perfectionism as well, I suppose. But that's the context for that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
yeah, and in terms of like
But,
growing more naturally, like it was just like kind of like just going off what you were saying when you were saying that like it's a lot better to like just trying to get more used to like streaming and talking to like just a couple of chatters at the same time, and then over time once it's going to be like a smaller growth instead of just like buying your viewers and bots and etc. But as you are growing more consistently and like you're growing slowly so to speak, but as those a lot of people are starting to come in, it's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to like introduce yourself a lot more because you're more comfortable just like talking in front of the cameras and like while you're streaming and working on music and things like that. And I feel like with
mm-hmm.
that it also just it gets you more used to just being able to like actually properly like talk to about yourself, instead of just not knowing what to say or do when you do get those viewers that come in. It's just like, all right, what do I do? What do I say? And then adding on to that, it's just like because of that, a lot of people get discouraged when all those people that came into the stream, like let's say like you're a small streamer and you get like between like 20 something viewers or 30 something viewers from somebody else that you've been watching, and they finally decide, oh, let's rate his stream. You're like, oh crap, I didn't expect this. But even though we didn't expect it, we still know what to do. We still know how to introduce ourselves because like feel like me and Eyes is like it's second nature for us at this point. We know how to give a little intro for the Raiders and things like that, and that's when we started like catching up with the chat and talking with the chat and everybody, and just talking to everybody, introducing ourselves to everybody and things like that. But as for somebody else that's not used to that, they're gonna sit there and they'll try to give like an intro and things like that, but then they won't be as engaging after that, and then they'll get discouraged when people end up leaving. And they're like, oh, what happened? I had all these viewers. And it's like, yeah, that was the problem. You're only focused on the numbers. Like, yeah, you had good numbers for a little bit, but they're not going to stick around because you're really bland. You're not really doing anything to engage with anybody, you know? So.
Yeah, so you need the practice, and it's like, I feel like different, like there's so many aspects of streaming. It's not as simple as be yourself and go live. You know?
Right.
Like there's like layers to it, and it's like each of those different layers you kind of like get access to as you get more practice doing certain things, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it really, like, I think to your point, it's like I feel like there's so much to practice, and like you can't really practice by yourself, you know? It's like you gotta practice by doing the thing, and then you are very rarely in control of the opportunity you have to practice, because it's like you don't know what the day's gonna, you don't know how the stream's gonna turn out, right? And it's like you got to be ready to be like, oh, I get to practice right now, like whatever it is. Like someone just came in, I just got to follow her. Like I got to practice my intro now. It's like, I mean, I guess you can kind of practice your intro like without people, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like what Eyes, like I feel like he's got it down packed with like when his intro, like whenever he gets a new follower, for example, like immediately he's like, make sure everybody like welcomes everybody into the chat, things like that. He asks like, are you a musician? Like, where are you from? Like, do you produce as well? Things like that. And I think that's really cool that he does that, just because.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've noticed you've been doing that now too.
Yeah, because it actually helps. It's a lot more engaging.
I shouldn't take credit for that. Yeah. Sorry,
but it's like a good way to like get the chat, like get the person that came in here, like, oh, he's actually asking like who I am and things like that. And it's just like, oh, like thank you for the follow, and then you just go back to what you're doing, you know.
Well, thank you. That's very, very kind of me to say.
It definitely helps watching streamers, like watching you both have like helped me tremendously in my streaming journey, you know, just like trying to, there's things where I'm like, you know, it's stealing but not stealing, you know. It's like it's I don't know, you're like giving credit or anything like that, but
I like to give as much, even just simple stuff. I just like to give other people ideas, even if I'm using them for my Twitch channel. It's just like, yeah, it's a universal platform. Take it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And these are things that usually
as long as it's not my music. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, oh, that's a good intro song in background. Let me.
Oh yeah, it's mine. It's mine.
You put that on there.
All right.
Yeah,
I did have a question for you, Bordy.
Yeah. Shoot.
So what was it that that made you want to like join like the Anti-Perfectionists, and like, or like what does it like mean to you to like be an anti-perfectionist, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first part is kind of easy. It's the movement found me, right? So I was kind of just starting out streaming, and definitely had the mindset of like my friends were just telling me, just like, dude, just be yourself and click live. Like that's all. There's like literally nothing else you need to do. Like they don't know, right? But it's like, so that's what I did, and then I just you know, a few times a week got on like live and just chat on myself for 2 hours straight into nobody, and one day Eyes came in, and he was like, I think my first person ever to come in my stream and start talking to me a little bit, and I don't know, we just started connecting on that and outside of it, and then I started watching his stream, and that's when I started learning about the anti-perfectionist stuff. I think we had conversations about what it meant, and just being a perfectionist, and we shared that. I think that feeling of like kind of getting too deep in the weeds, which I think he was seeing me do on my stream also. Still find myself doing it, but it's like when I'm working on music. But it was that sort of thing where I would find myself like, oh, I don't like the way that this guitar part sounds, and then I would just go in, and I'd be like zooming in until you can see like individual lines of the waves, and just like moving something by like point zero
Hey,
zero zero one of a
I
thing, you
still do
know?
that. I still do that as long as it gets it on time.
I
I
can't even
do
lie, I
my
Yeah,
do
I do
too
not be
sometimes.
overtly.
I
I'm like, let
mean,
me not be overtly picky, but it has to be good. It has to be clean.
there's a time and a
Can't be
place for
sloppy,
that for
just like you
sure.
said.
You
Yeah,
can't, yeah.
yeah,
There's
1000%.
there's a balance to perfectionism, right? But I think it was where it was getting, and where it can get. I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but for me, I think it can get to a point of kind of being toxic in a way, right? Because then you're being so perfectionist about something, and then you zoom out and you're like discouraged. Like
Yeah,
I would find myself discouraged a lot, where it's just like I get in there and I'm in the weeds for way too long, for like an hour, like the whole stream goes by. 2 hours later, I pop out and I'm like, what have I accomplished? And it's
you
just
get
like,
you get
I,
intimidated to even open up the audio workstation.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's like, what's the
exactly.
point? It's like, last time I opened this up, I spent 2 hours moving this thing, and I'm not even sure at this point if I can tell the difference between 2 hours ago and now. And that's when it's like, that level of perfectionism is actually not even helping you get to where you want to go. Like in my head, it's like, well, I need to get this part perfect before I can move to the next part.
Mhm.
And so it's like, but then I never get to the next part, you know? And so then I lose confidence. I decide that, oh, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna scrap this track. I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna start something new now. And so I think
What a
that's,
sucky feeling. I know that
yeah,
feeling.
it's
Yeah,
a
I
terrible
do too. It
feeling,
sucks.
And then sometimes even opening that project back up would kind of give me PTSD, where I'm just like, oh man, I
Yeah,
remember
you
that guitar part that I spent way too long on. It's like I don't even want to like
I don't
I
want to
don't
look
want
at
to
this like, ugh.
look at
well, even for
this
me, like
right now. Yeah.
mastering my songs have always been, for the longest time. It's not so much anymore, but like mastering my songs were such a tedious headache. I would always get to the end of production and kind of mixing, then I'd get to the mastering stage and not touch it, because it was I learning mastering. It took so much to learn, and that was where my perfectionism really kicked into high gear. And thankfully I've been able to let go of that. I'm like, okay, this is a pretty decent master. Not perfect, but the mix is great. The master's fairly loud, and there's not a lot of obvious clipping and stuff like that, or crunchiness. You'd have to seriously listen deep for it. So it's good. And
I
then
think there's a time and place for perfectionism in that sense. Like I forgot where I saw it. I think it was on Reddit. I think this is like advice that you kind of hear from people a lot. I feel like we've talked about this, but it's like there's different parts of the music production process. And I think on the back end of it, like post stuff, right? Like you're working on mixing and mastering, like having some level of perfectionism, I think is part of the process. But breaking those things down into different sessions is important. And I think that was helpful for me too. I think part of the problem with the perfectionism was like, I'm in the middle of writing a song. Like this is a creative process.
mhm,
And I'm like, oh, I got creative for like a very short time, and now I'm excited about this track, and I'm gonna do the full mix and master, kind of not mix and master. But I'm gonna do like get that track perfect, like
yeah,
that an individual stem, and it's like I haven't really finished the creative process, and then jumping back and forth gets really like really tedious. It's like your brain is actually not your brain is switching gears too often. It's like you need to be ready. Like I'm gonna sit down and work on some real tedious stuff for 2 hours, and
yeah,
then it's like now I'm doing mixing stuff, but it's like now I'm gonna be just creative. I'm gonna open my brain here and come in and just like see flow and see what happens. That's the creative process. So like trying to do all that in one was like the advice I was reading. I was just like, yeah, this is where I'm messing up over here. It's like I'm coming in like I'm gonna make a song that involves creatively coming up with stuff and also mixing it and perfecting all the stems and then mastering while I'm doing all. It's like no wonder I can't finish anything. Like,
Just throwing too much on yourself right there at that point.
well,
yeah.
the way it typically goes to is the as far as I'm aware. Chat, correct me. You guys correct me. But if if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me at least. But if you are a musician or a band, you go into the studio and record. You do your part. That's it. Next thing you know, the song's done. There is a producer who takes those recordings that you've done and does the meticulous work of making sure they're on time, making sure everything's in there, the song is built. Then it's handed off to a mixing engineer. The mixing engineer takes everything that the producer didn't have time to do or missed, which is EQ reduction, panning, mixing everything, audio levels, making sure that everything's good there. Then after that, it's handed to a mastering engineer to make sure that it's brought up to a commercial level, to, so that you don't listen to Taylor Swift and Bordebeats and the song's like 3 decibels more quiet, and then it goes back to Taylor Swift again or something like that, and it's loud. There's a reason that things are mastered, so everything's at the same level, and you can not have to adjust the stereo volume. But whenever you are doing it all yourself, your ears are on the part that you recorded, then you're into the production, then you're into the mixing, then you're into the mastering, and your ears are on it so much that you start to hyperanalyze it and get very surgical whenever, if you just handed it off to somebody else who knew what they were doing and had given it back to you, you could probably pick it apart too if you were that experienced and find out where they made errors. But most of the time it's just given back to you as a finished product, and you're like, yo, this is perfect, this is good. But
you don't want to do anything else
when you're doing it. Yeah, exactly. When you're doing it all yourself, you've heard everything on it the whole time, hours into it, so you get a lot more picky on it. So
yeah,
that's where my method always is. Yeah, that's where like my method is. I do separate them for the most. Like I mix while I produce, and to make sure I get the mix that I think that I want, and then I will reset the mix. I always tell people this in stream. I do a pink mix, which completely resets the mix, and then I mix it a third time. So I do 3 separate mixes on the song just to make sure my ears are humbled. Bring it back to ground zero, remix it again. Then it's time for a master. And all of that, it has become so much more separate, but it's so fast now because I've been doing it for so long. I'm used to it, and I know what problems to typically try and find. After years of doing it, you become a lot more proficient and quick at it, so it's easier to not be as much of a perfectionist because you know the tricks on how to do it. So, I mean, be an anti-perfectionist, but definitely do take the time to learn how to do things correctly too, but
yeah, I mean, the fact that they are, and I'm sure a lot of people in music production and music know that it's like those are full-time jobs that people have as a profession, is like a mix engineer or a master engineer, or just a creative, like an artist. Like, so it's the fact that those things can be such distinctly different roles and full-time jobs says a lot about, like, if you're trying to do it all yourself, like how separate those processes are and how your brain is kind of processing is different, But it's a good point about the challenge of that. I think that is the biggest challenge of when you are kind of doing it all yourself. It's like you're kind of tied, especially if you were the one writing the music. It's like you're tied to it in some kind of way, and your ears are like fatigued from that. And so it's like each part of the process kind of compounds into just like, yeah, I don't know, but
it just blends together.
It blends together. And then I feel like for me, a lot of times I like have almost like excuses in my head, maybe, of like why I did something a certain way. And so it's like, well, this sounds fine how it is because that's kind of how I liked it, And it's like, but I don't actually like, I'm not really looking at it objectively anymore as like, oh, this part needs to be lower. It's like, no, it's like, if I did have it, if I like,
yep.
It's like very subjective. It's like, no, but I love that part. Like, I remember turning it down. I didn't like it as much, so I turned it back up. That's why that's up there. But it's like, I was looking at it objectively. I'd be like, dude, that thing is too loud. Like,
yeah. And that's kind of what the pink noise mix thing does for me. What interests me is Soundbites. It has a giveaway for the subs, and I was on the wheel yesterday. I didn't get a message from him, so I don't think I'd won. But he has something where he's giving away a master to the subs. So you send him the studio mix, and he masters it for you. So I think about how interesting that would be to send him one of the songs for my album and have him master it, because then he would be able to give me super meticulous feedback on where my mixing mistakes were and stuff like that. And plus to hear how it sounds on professional equipment and for somebody who's probably been doing it for far longer than what I've been doing.
Yeah, and he has such a range of experience, I think, like doing it, like for music. I know he's done things with like scores, like shows and movies, documentaries, stuff like that. So I think it's like, dude's like he is a professional.
Yeah, he definitely knows what he's doing for sure.
Like, people pay him to do that professionally. Yeah, so it's like, And he's got the gear. I think that's what's
A
fun
laggy
about
Haggy
Morningstar.
won yesterday. Big dubs.
Oh, really? Oh,
Rick. Yeah, I know.
nice.
Rick, like they're like best friends. I swear.
Super.
1000%.
It's like, of course he
No, I
won.
mean,
Of course.
I'll get it one day.
The
No,
mod
I'm
one.
kidding.
Best
No,
friend.
what's funny about Soundbites is just like he's just as chaotic in his own way too. You go into
Yeah.
his stream and it's kind of like similar to the chaos level of mine, but it's just a different style. I like it.
Yeah, he's got great. I love his energy. I always have.
I do
have a good
too.
time just like, and it's like he can keep going. Like he keep things interesting even when there's like silence and stuff like that. It's like it seems like it's just entertainment.
Yeah.
Like, especially on the days when he's doing like a feedback Friday or something, he's got like the glasses with like the pink wig on and everything. Like,
That
I'm
pink
just sitting there,
wig, the poncho.
yeah, I
I
freaking
feel like
love
that
it.
was like occasional for a while. Like I would be like every once in a while, I'd be like, oh, he's wearing the poncho, and then like now it's like I think it's like full. That's his full time like setup. Like, yeah,
He's like, I'm
jealous.
sticking with it now. I can't leave it now.
Yeah, for real.
And looking
I
at the
think
chat right
we're
now,
all jealous of this
Soundbites.
thing. Oh, Soundbites in here? Nice. What's
Yeah,
up,
he
dude?
even said in the chat, he said, for me, I record as close to a mix as possible. Then mix on different days because it involves using the patch bay. Mastering is done on the same day as a mix to get set up. But mastering for me usually really happens on a separate day and takes like a couple of days of listening on AirPods, car, etc. So, which that's actually
Yeah,
really
that's
cool.
Part of my understanding of mastering, so I have pretty rudimentary understanding, but like I know the level thing, like making it commercially, like it'll, like you were saying, not
Low
dropping between
decibels.
tracks,
Yeah.
but also like something to do with the way the EQ is. I don't know if it's the EQ, but so that way it sounds great on every set of speakers, right? Because it's like
Mm-hmm.
things can sound like I've listened to tracks where like the bass just cuts so well, like if you're listening to it on with subs, but then you listen to on like your iPhone or something like that, and it doesn't. But then you listen to like these big pop hits or whatever, and it's like, damn, my iPhone's got some pretty good bass right now, like like in a trap beat or something, like it's hitting. And it's like you don't need the sub to get it, but it's like I'm not picking that up in my track because something about the like obviously the mastering is not great. So it's like that sub is only there if you got a good sub. So I don't know if
Right.
that's the case, but I would assume it's like is it some level of like let's say you want that bass to hit, it's like it's the range of that frequency that you need to like expand it out to make sure that that bass gets hit like in the full spectrum so that no matter what speakers it hits or like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sometimes it really depends on cutting out all of the other frequencies in the sub. Like if in Ableton, for instance, Fat Loud taught me this, and it made the world of a difference. And I still do this. You put an EQ3 on one of your subs or sub basses, turn off the mid and high, and just keep the low. So it only catches the low frequencies, and you just adjust the low frequency between like 120 and 140. And the bass and sub pops out super clean. It gets rid of any extra fuzz on top and any like big buzz underneath. And it just sits right perfect in the mix. Beautiful. I don't do it with all the basses because like especially with post-hardcore, I kind of like that crunchy distorted sound on the bass. But if I'm making EDM or some sort of hip-hop beat, I typically would throw it on a 808.
That's something that's done is mastering all done on the master track.
Well, that particular what I'm discussing here is that's done in the production / mixing stage.
Okay, that's kind of what I was
That part
understanding.
would,
Yeah.
Because it's like you basically want the like all the other like tracks basically to kind of like dip out in those frequencies, like them to not overcrowd the
you have to
bass.
make headroom everywhere you can. Like for hi-hats and stuff, you cut thousands of low end on the like thousands of hertz or kilohertz or whatever it is to get hit hertz. So if you were to put on your hats, you cut like 4,000 hertz, or 4K hertz or whatever, just so you even though you don't hear the stuff or might not even see it on the field, there can still be some resonating low frequency in things like your hats, your cymbals, your snares, stuff like that. So you just have to cut each one individually to know how it's not affecting it too much to where it shapes the sound differently, but it still cuts out any unwanted noise. these little ghost things that are in there that you don't even hear. But like when you've been mixing and producing or mixing and mastering for a while, you can kind of start hearing that automatically in other people's mixes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
It
definitely got
does.
in the habit of like with the hats, like drawing a little like thing like
Hmm.
this, like
The
just
bell,
dragging
yeah.
the little bell like
Yep.
right on the high part,
Yep.
because yeah, definitely kind of like bleeds out all over the place.
Eyes, I did want to ask you about the bass thing you were talking about when you said that you
Hmm.
just cut out the middle and high end and you just use the low end and cut it down to like what 120, 140.
Yeah,
With
something like
doing
that.
that, you don't have to really compress it after that, or do you still use compression after that to even out the bass?
I How do you like? Do you mean sidechain compression or compression compression?
Compression.
I really don't compress my basses, to be honest. I adjust the volume of them, and if I do compress them, it's either through glue compression because it's easier to control. But most of the time, I let the bass be what it is. I guess if I'm adding just a kick and it's just a transient kick, I make sure that that volume is turned down and I add a clipper, so it gives you a perception of it being louder, but it sits in the mix without taking up headroom.
Okay, I see
It's a
what you
trick.
mean.
But compressing the bass itself can really make them sound squashed. So you want to, in my opinion, you want to not compress your bass, but let the compression of the bass happen in the mastering stage when you put that final compression on the entire mix. Because otherwise, it's going to make your bass sound really squished and kind of a bit too loud. So a lot of the time, your bass can actually be a lot quieter than what you anticipate, and then you'll really hear it when you start putting a final compression with your mastering on there.
And that's when like the bass will like really come out after that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's another one of the reasons I do the pink noise mix is because it always automatically sets my bass to almost a perfect level, almost every time. And then I throw a master on it, compress it, and I'm like, if the bass is too quiet, I'll up it like 1 to 2, maybe 3 decibels, depending on what it is. Sometimes maybe more. But then I'll re-listen over and over again until, and over this is over a course of some days as well, to really make sure that the bass is balanced where I want. But the compressor, the final compressor and limiter that is on your master track, that should be in my opinion, the only thing compressing your bass,
Okay.
because the bass needs to sit actually far more quiet than you think. Interestingly enough, it will stick out. Same thing with snares; they don't need to be as loud. Kicks, snares, and bass, they can be a lot more quiet than you realize.
Right.
But that's my 2 cents on it. I compress bass on the way. This is sound bites. I compress bass on the way in, but also have a separate channel using a splitter from a DI box, direct input. For the bass, direct in 2 channel for bass. Basically, parallel compression from the recording stage. See, parallel compression is, and that's another entire different spectrum into production. And if you parallel compress your bass, that would help add some meat to it. But you also have to adjust the volume of that parallel compressed bass. And for you guys who don't know what parallel compression is, it's taking the exact same signal, say your bass drum or your 808, right? You send that to a different channel, so you hear the bass twice. But on that second channel, you add an unholy amount of compression to make it sound like absolute trash. But then you adjust the volume up or down on that compressed signal, and it's only there to really thicken up and add more life to the main instrument, vocal, or whatever it is.
Interesting. Just like duplicating the track, sausage fattening it, and then adjusting the volume on it.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah.
More or less. Yeah.
So a
But it's
weird
easier. It's easier
way to
through
describe that
parallel.
for me, but how I'm
Yeah, but
understanding
but that's that's kind of a thing where what they call explain like I'm five or whatever. I have people do that to me all the time. Like I don't understand. I'll try to put it in this way. But that's exactly it. Like you're duplicating the track, adding a sausage fattener to it to a ridiculous amount, and then adjusting that second. But it's easier just to send it to another channel that has the effect built on already, because it doesn't play the same exact sample, or it's not utilizing the same exact sample twice. It's just once, but it plays it twice through a series of channels, and one of those channels has an effect on it. Is this
Is
making
that
sense?
generally done in hardware then, or like does Ableton have is there like a parallel compression VST or
Ableton,
like they have their
no,
own built-in
it's built into Ableton.
software?
It's
Hmm.
built into they're your sends and return or your send and return
Oh, I
track.
see. You would do it with a send and return track.
Yep, it's Ableton's version. Well, Ableton has multiple buses. You can group things, but grouping kind of limits you on your busing ability. But you can also use send and return, which allows a lot more flexibility, which is similar to grouping, but there are times where you want to use grouping versus send and return.
Mhm.
Interestingly enough.
Yeah, compression's like such a important thing. I think it's like I don't know. I feel like it's one of the first things I learned to use and like going from 0 to 1, I guess, like not using compression at all in any track at any time to like why are people always talking about compressors? Like and trying to understand, but I feel like I never really got like too
It's hard
far
to.
into it. Like it's hard to figure out how to use it correctly. I think I mean I like side chaining a lot. I feel like part of it depends on the style of music you're making, right? It's like I side
Mhm.
chain my bass to my kick every time because I like the way it sounds. Like where every time the
Mhm.
kick hits, like the bass just drops out almost completely and then kind of like
Yep.
ramps up.
That
So
can
it's
be a
like
really cool
boom,
effect. Yeah.
boom.
Yep.
Like
And it's genre dependent too.
Yeah, that's
mhm.
true.
It's
Yeah,
genre
that's where like
dependent.
the OTT stuff is for like EDM is critical because like you can't get that
Mm-hmm.
pumping sound with like a really intense like compression. Like it'd be a disaster trying to do that like in automation or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, plus like
and
EDM, it's
also,
not gonna hit as hard just with the kick drum alone, you know.
and to wrap
Mm,
the subject of compression, Soundbites kind of was more or less. It seems like he was saying what I was saying. He said, "Yeah, I most always the blend the almost limited compressed signal with the non-compressed signal with parallel compression, which is what I described. But the compressed signal is almost always lower than the channel I blend it with, and that's 1,000% true.
So
the
true.
the parallel
well, that
compressed
makes sense.
signal is going to sit behind the main. You do this a lot with vocals, and it actually thickens up the vocals too. Vocals, guitars, a lot of the stuff. It just depends. It's not something you want to use all the time, but once you start learning how to use it, I'm still in this part where I'm learning how to use it to where it sounds really good. It can sound really good. Like Blank Page, I used it quite a bit in Blank Page with the vocals and guitars, and I'm really happy with how it ended up being. It's just another cool way to make your mix shine and sound more full.
Shout out
So,
compression.
so on the 2024 segue change, you were saying to me that it's a year of transition for you. That's because your son's starting in daycare, so on and so forth. But even more so, it sounded like your projects are going to revolve around chronicling my son's life through sound, as you put it. But near the end of the message was one of the more wholesome things, is because you said you will always you're learning that you will always find time for music even if it's not your top priority, and sometimes that is more important to me than trying to force yourself to make it big off of inauthenticity.
Hmm.
So going off of that, 2024, transitioning into somewhat of a new life and sampling a lot of your son's things and making time for music. That's a
Yeah.
lot for you to cover right there, but go ahead. You have the mic.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there for sure. Yeah, let me think about like how to uh, walk through this journey a little
Was that
bit.
too much to just throw at you right there?
No, 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 I mean, when you asked me, like, I just kind of bit from the top. Like when I was messaging you back, I was trying to figure out like this is what's on my mind right now. Like I feel like these kind of things might come up, and it's like relevant to my place in the community and all this stuff. I think I've sent some messages in Discord about like I'm not going to be as present as I would like to be in streams and things like that, but I'm gonna try. I want to do my best to like stay involved in the community and you know be in Discord or whatever I can. And so, like, I think that the easiest way to kind of like high level explain the journey I've been on is like, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's like I kind of was like getting, I not kind of, I was fully burnt out from my like my work life, my career. I had kind of
Mm.
prioritized my career for a very long time. I actually, like I talked about being in a band before in college, like I tried to stay in that band when they were trying to like they want to go on tour, they want to do things, and like they were the other guys in my band were like dedicated to it. Like they were like, this is what this is what I'm gonna do. And I landed a really good job at a school that it was a sales position where I was finding myself traveling a lot and all this stuff, and I was making good money, and I was like, I don't think I can. I was like stressing out trying to do both, and so I kind of gave up all the music stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I then pursued my career like 100%. Like I just to a point where like I just music didn't just fall to like a back burner. Like music just disappeared off the radar. Like I listened to music, but then also like I was talking about too. At some point, I was just like listening to lo-fi and just it was just background to me. Like I lost my passion for even like rabbit holing into artists and like learning about like just getting more into music at a deeper level. And but I was always passionate about it for so long, and I wanted that to be what I wanted. I wanted that to be my profession in life at some point, right? And I found myself in the situation where I felt like, oh, I have to do this because this is, you know, financial security for me. It's all these
Mm-hmm.
different things. Like I feel like I am making this decision, but like not fully happy with it, if that makes sense. And so
Like choosing to
when,
settle basically instead of just pursuing the passions and taking the chance. You mean?
yeah, like taking the chance and like, and so for most of my professional career, then I found myself constantly wondering, like, what if, what if I had put all this energy and time that I've been putting into my career into music and chasing music? Like, what might that look like, And I think I just always asked myself that question and never got an answer. And I don't think I have that answer now, but I'm a lot closer. And I think being a stay-at-home parent was kind of that. Like, this is where it all sort of unraveled. Was just like I had a totally wrong like perception of what it meant to be a stay-at-home parent, which is ironic given the stigma that I feel like I'm up against, right? It's like I was like, I'm effing burnt out on this career stuff. Like, I don't want to work anymore. My son's on the way. Like, very fortunate that like my wife's in a position that could support both of us right now for some amount of time. I was like, we made the decision as a family, like I would quit my job. I would be a stay-at-home parent full time. And then in the back of my head, I was like, now is my chance to pursue my music dream. And it didn't take very long before I realized that I just don't have that. I don't have enough time. Like I was putting as much as I could, and as the amount of time that I was putting into like trying to do social media, trying to work on my stream, trying to write music, trying to produce stuff, like all of that started kind of like creeping in to a point where I started to see the impacts on my parenting. Like earlier on, it's just a matter of like losing touch with my son. Like what does he need right now when he's crying, And I found that obviously if I wasn't watching any Twitch, if I wasn't doing anything in my studio, I wasn't writing music, I wasn't doing anything, and I was just 100% focused in on my son, I could just like I was in tune with him. Like I knew exactly what he wanted all the time, and I could just make him happy all the time. And so the year of 2023 was a lot of that. Was kind of just like over the course of 2023, I was trying to find this balance and like realizing that, oh, I can't like chase this music dream the same way. It's not the same as like if I had no kids and I was chasing it full time. Like having a kid change, it's like a different scenario, right? And I got to work with the time that I have. And so, yeah, towards I think something I've kind of figured out over time is this balance of it, right? And I think um, one thing that came into play at some point before I started figuring out like, okay, I need to balance this was just like how much happier I was to have music back in my life in some capacity. I knew that I needed to give my son my full attention, but I could still integrate music into our lives together in some way. And I think trying to figure out what that meant, at some point that became having guitars in every room. Like I just, instead of having all my guitars sitting here, which ironically they're all sitting here right now, actually, except for my acoustic. Like I spread them out. I got a cajon. Like I bought other like toy instruments for my son that I can play with him and kind of like involve music anywhere I am in the house and not be here with headphones on staring at a computer screen because he doesn't like that. Um, that's not good parenting.
Right,
And
right.
so I think trying to find that balance has been sort of the thing for me. And I think part of 2023 was kind of maybe letting go of the idea of um, like making my career my music. Because if I'm being honest, at the beginning of 2023, my thought was kind of like, which where like the name Nostalgic Pressure comes from with the song was like, I have 12 months to make a career out of music, so I don't need to go back to my old job, or I don't need to go back to like working in the industry that I was in before. And so I was like, that's what drove me in the beginning at the expense of my son because I actually didn't know how hard it was going to be a stay-at-home parent, But as I figured that out, I was still kind of clawing and holding on to this. I can do both. I can do both. And I think over time I just kind of realized like, there are things I actually miss about working, like in the industry I was like, there's parts about that life that I do miss. But also I'm so much happier now that music's has some space for me. Or like I'm making space for music. And so yeah, again, I think it's just been trying to figure out that balance. And I think in 2024 now, I've decided that I'm going to go back to work. And I'm really excited about the things that I'm working on to try to get back into a new industry. Like I want to work in tech instead of in where I was in manufacturing before. So it's like I'm excited about these things. And so I want to be able to do that, but I also know now because of 2023, like in some ways I got to try what it would be like to like not do it full time because I didn't really get to right being a stay-at-home parent, but also kind of like see like what that work looks like if I were to do it full time. And I'm not sure that for me it would provide me the same happiness that it does as like a hobby. And so I think coming to those terms and accepting that has made it way easier to not feel like I need to be productive. I need to like do X, Y, and Z. And like now I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to have a day job. And then for fun, I'm going to work on music. And there's no pressure there. There's no expectation. There's nothing that I have to do about it. It's just me expressing myself with my art. And so I think now I'm trying to figure out how to like with the stream talking about like how if I want to stream again because I think I had a lot of fun doing that. I want to do that for my own self for my music and stuff like that, but still figuring out what that's going to look like from a practical standpoint, especially as I hopefully get a job. Once I get a job, then like my time will be a little bit more figured out. But it's like I think that's kind of where I'm at. So I feel like I'm not sure if I've answered the question, but I kind of just went off. But that's why 2024 is a big thing. Is like I think 2023 ended in a way where I look back at 2023 and I'm really proud of what I did and I'm proud of the personal growth that I've had. I've like so much reflection. I think I understand myself more and my identity. I'm more confident about who I am as a person. And so I'm taking that with me into 2024, knowing that there's all this transition that's going to happen. And music has to be a part of it in some way. The stuff I've done on Twitch, with the community, outside of stuff, like outside of work and music stuff, it's like that. And outside of my son, is like that's still going to be important to me. And so, how do I fit that into going back to work and having the normal, like quote unquote, normal life that I had? Um, and so yeah, coming to like we were talking about sampling my son, I think towards the end of 2023, that's a lot of what I was doing. And for a lot of my stream, I was trying to figure out what is like my brand, what am I about? Like I'm a stay-at-home dad, like so much of my life revolves around my son. Like I talk about it a lot, but I wasn't doing much with it other than talking about him. And me and my wife decided not to have him on the stream or anything like that. We don't want the kids to be on like have their face on the internet. I don't have his consent, obviously. He can't speak for himself. So it's like um so that's it's like a different thing then, right? It's like my channel isn't me and my son, you know, like that's not the channel. The channel is about me and my music. But I am a stay-at-home dad, so how do I integrate that? And so for a long time since he was born, I've just been recording random samples of him making noises and stuff. And so I've continued to do it every month. So now I have like a huge backlog of uncut recordings that are terrible because they're just so long. And then in between, I'm like, say that again. What'd you say? What'd you say, buddy? Like, so I like that's a whole process. I've spent some time cutting those up into little samples and things. But yeah, that's 2024. I think I'm gonna be trying to find some space for music to have that outlet. And I think if I'm gonna be sitting down working on music, I think I just want to mostly be sampling him because I have that to work with, and I think it'll be a fun way to show him my passion and show him what passion means, and also he's a part of it, which is kind of cool. I don't know. Maybe he thinks it's cool. Maybe he thinks it's corny when he gets older, but
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I see it as a potential image for yourself. Think about how many times you can sample him, and as he gets older, the samples are going to change, and then eventually he'll be singing in your songs.
That's my thought.
Eventually,
And yeah, he's
eventually
gonna
he'll
look
be
back and
writing,
be
and
like,
then you'll be a sample in his song. You know what I mean? The
he's gonna look back when he
potential.
can be like, wait, that was me in your song making the little baby noise, and be like, yeah, that was you.
Yeah, and that's what's up. Like I think that I brought this up. I I had that question in the Discord. I don't know if you guys remember, like a while back when I was like curious about like how people uh like what their relationship was with their parents, like exposing them to music, or like their family, or like kind of what got them into it. Because like I feel like I feel like it's so important to for me to show my son my passion for music. And like I'd be lying if I said in the back of my head like I didn't like I want him to be into music, but I also like absolutely don't want to force him into music. You know, like that's the worst thing I want to do is like I want him to be exposed to lots of things, like whatever sports, like just try everything and see what he likes. But definitely like in the back, like I hope it's music, you know. But it's
Yeah.
like I never want to push that on somebody, right? I never want to push it because my parents didn't push that on me, and so I'm always that's why I was like curious because like I'm always curious about like how did people find this love for music and what role did their parents have? Because like I don't know people that are passionate, super passionate about music, and their parents hate music, or their parents don't do anything related to music at all, or like listen to music. It's like I don't know, I just found it. You know, it's like feel like a lot of times there's some level of like environmental exposure, and maybe it's not parents, maybe it's like friends or you know whatever it might be, but I feel like there's always some kind of environmental exposure that cultivated it. And it's certainly cultivated. It's not like yeah, you know, I'm passionate about music because my parents forced me to do piano lessons 3 days a week for 10 years. Like those people generally are like that's why I hate piano. Like so I don't know, yeah. But I feel like
I
you guys answered that question, but I'm curious if you guys have anything to
I
say about that.
I feel like for me, it's like I don't I don't really know. It's just always been kind of a part of my life. My parents were musicians, and that's how we were raised. Next thing you know, I was doing it, but I was more into skateboarding at an earlier age, so I thought I'd make a career out of that. But at some point, it shifted to music, and now I'm all in. But
You couldn't truly
part of the
escape at
thing
the end of the day.
part of the thing I love about it is that I don't really have an answer as to why I'm so enthralled by it and why it's my life's calling. But I'm kind of happy that I don't know the answer because then I dissect the answer. It's just better to not know for me.
I feel like that's kind of how it is for me too. I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, like my parents were musicians growing up, but they didn't like weren't as invested in it as I was now. Like my mom, she played flute like throughout like high school and stuff. My dad, he played trumpet and was in marching band and things like that. But they just really kind of just put it down and just pursued other things after they graduated and all that stuff. But me, on the other hand, like I wouldn't say it was forced upon me, but it was kind of like introduced to me in a strong way. But it the reaction was positive because I ended up loving the hell out of it. I ended up having like a lot of fun, even though I was like still young. I was only like what 11, 12 years old, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, you clearly love it. Like just stick with it, you know." And I did, and you see where I am now with it because of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the way to that's kind of what I've figured out and like understood. Now it's a matter of executing and putting that into practice, right? It's just like exposure is important, like having him be exposed to as many things as possible, music and outside of music, everything, right? And then see what makes him interested and like support him following that, whatever that is,
Mm-hmm.
until he gets to a point.
Mm-hmm.
And then the challenge I think becomes, with anything that you're into, there's always kind of like a point where you have to like, it's not all just easy and fun, and there's always a point where you kind of have to do some work if you want to get to the next level, whatever that means. And it's
There's
like,
a
you don't want to
crap
force
ton of
it.
work in this.
Yeah, there's a crap ton of work, and it's like, it is a question of like, well, do you love it enough to put in that work? And it's like, you want to be supportive and
Mhm.
help push along, like, to make sure they can overcome those hurdles, but also like, you're not forcing it. It's not like, son, I've invested too much money on music equipment, you need to continue working on music, like, it's like, it's not that, but it's also
You don't
like,
want to
like,
disappoint your parents, do
figure it out.
you?
Yeah, exactly. And then he's in therapy. No.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, but it's like, that's the whole. I think that's maybe like, it's a parenting thing. It's like, I feel like I'm very analytical in a way, try to want to do it right. I don't want to like, I don't think there is a right and wrong way to do it, but I think asking myself the questions are an important part of that process. Because if I didn't ask myself any of these questions, then I don't think I would make the right decisions. I mean, like, I can't just go off of like what my instinct says. It's like there's an
Right.
instinct part, but there's also like, let's think about what my instincts are saying for a second and like think
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
Compare
And
and contrast or
it really
contrast.
like ties into just like, yeah, like you say, like they don't really force it upon you when you're actually trying to pursue something as you're growing up learning about music. But it's just like they encourage you to keep pushing because they know at the end of the day how much you love and enjoy it as you're growing up. So it's like, for example, like let's say like I have an audition for like this honor band or something like that growing up in high school, and it's just like I don't really try hard in the audition, but it's just like, yeah, you need to sit down and practice this. But it's not like they're forcing me to do it. It's just like they know I'm gonna be disappointed if I don't practice enough and things like that. So it's like at the end of the day, they really care about how passionate you are about music, and they just really want to see you succeed because they see how much you love and enjoy it. It's all about seeing the happiness at the end of the day, in my perspective at
Yeah,
least.
totally. No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think that's a good point of just like being able to identify, uh, like what your kids truly love, and seeing through that when they're like talking. Like, I can imagine being, having like in your example, having an audition and being stressed out about it or something, but it's like you're in that position because you want to, right? And it's like, but in
Right.
the stress of it, you might be like, oh, I hate this. Like, I don't want to like do this anymore. It's like, and identifying, it's like, okay, but he loves this. What he needs right now is support, not like, oh, maybe you're right. Maybe you actually don't love music that much then. Otherwise, it's like it's not like that.
It's like, let's say like your son decided like, oh, he wanted to do sports and he was actually like pretty good at it. He just decided to want to play like basketball or something, just for example. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
he's like really stressing out trying to get this audition, like not audition, but like tryouts, trying to get on the team and things like that. But he's like stressing out trying to like worrying about like how it's gonna go and things like that. But all you can really do is just sit there and just like keep pushing him, and just like, because that he loves basketball, like.
Hmm.
And then you can't just like sit around and turn around and just be like, oh, see, you should have just been a musician like I was. Like, no, you can't do that.
That's funny.
Like, even sound bites right now, he just said, yeah, when your kids see you doing something you love, that's important, and they learn by example right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kids are extremely malleable.
Yeah, I've heard that too, and I think that's that's one of the big reasons why I just started like putting like instruments around the house and just playing them when I had a chance, because it was like, I think for a while I was like, I realized like I wanted to show him, like, it was a big part of me, like being at home with him was wanting to show him my passion, but it was kind of hard to do here when, for me, making music for a while meant like sitting in front of Ableton and having my studio with all my stuff. And it's like I had to kind of separate that. Like as like that's not what music is only. Like I can be involved in music and not sit in the studio, you know? So it's like
Right.
that was really really freeing for me to like also not feel like I needed to record everything that I was doing all the time. Like I could just pick up a guitar with no expectation that I'm going to record anything or like, you know. And I think that's been fun. Like my son loves to dance. It's awesome. Like he's always like even like we go to the playground and he'll just pick up sticks and then he'll like accidentally hit it on something and then like it only takes like one bar. He'll be like dut 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 and he's like, "Oh, dut 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 dut." You know, like and like sometimes we'll like drop something will drop off the table and it'll be like do 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 do. He'll be like, "Oh." And he'll like just start dancing. It's
No
like
way. That's
I'm not
sweet.
even
Oh,
kidding.
that's
It's so
awesome.
funny.
A great
It's
son.
like he just
Great.
has like rhythm already, and it's like I feel like everything he wants to do is just like because I'm always walking around like man, and my wife isn't a musician, but she loves dancing. She loves music, so she's always dancing around with him. So I think that combo is like hopefully he's like getting some rhythm. He's like seeing some dancing. Like I think he's just it's like what Soundbites is saying, right? It's like they just kind of want to copy. I mean, he copies everything we're doing anyway. That's why we gotta be careful too, you know.
What if he?
Um,
What if? What if he collabs with one of us in like 20 years, like Prominent or me, or
That'd be
When we're
so
like in
dope.
our 40s or
Yeah.
something like that. Like
sound
he'll be
bites?
he'll be an anti-perfectionist for sure. Gotta make sure. I gotta be vigilant about his perfectionism. If I see him being perfectionist, just start buy some of those like anti-perfectionist stickers. Just start slapping them on him. Like, son, what are you doing? You know what it is.
Hell yeah.
Oh,
Well, what do you
man.
think, Prominent? You're hosting. You want
I
some more
did-
questions? You want to open up the chat? What's up?
There was one more question I did want to ask you before we did open it up to the chat. And what
Well,
was
let's open it to chat now so they can start asking questions, and then
yeah, of course.
we'll get a dialogue going whenever that's going. So, chat, feel free to ask questions for any of the hosts, or more specifically, Bordebeats, and we'll finish up Prominent's last question while you guys are chatting. I'll keep an eye on chat.
I'm surprised Chris hasn't come in here asking, "Does he love me yet?" Like
Yeah, right. Right.
I've been
Well,
waiting on it
if he's
to
not asking, if he's not asking the question in the chat, I guess I can't answer the question right now.
That's
Right?
true. That's true.
Just,
Absolutely.
just keep it. Don't know.
Right,
Thank you
right,
guys.
right.
Thank you guys for being here. Genuinely, thank you guys.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, of course. But while the chat is going, getting their questions ready, I did want to ask you, Bordy, like, so the concept of just anti-perfectionism, like, what does it mean to you entirely? I know you kind of like went over this a little bit earlier while we were talking, but like, as like a whole, like, what does it mean to you? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like to kind of elaborate, I guess, on what I was saying because I think before what I was saying was maybe more like on the technical, like actually like
yeah,
doing things in Ableton, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, I think higher level, I think, you know, that was a good example of it, but just like getting too in the weeds with things, you know, that doesn't necessarily need to be a sample. That could be like something going on in my life. For me, that could be over analyzing a situation, um, and just trying to think of all the different variables and all the different variations of how I might have been able to handle something in the past or how I think I should handle something in the future. Um, and you know, this is advice that like I think a lot of people read about. Or like I get a lot of it fed to me, I guess. But like for me, presence is really important, and it's something that I hadn't really been doing very well. Um, like, and in the last year, I think I've learned a lot about how to be more present in the now, because you know we're always thinking about the past, we're always thinking about the future, and that takes us away from living right now in the present. Um, That's all I was thinking about. Like, it's so hard to be happy when you're always thinking about the future of like what you need to do to be happy, and you're thinking about the past, about how the things are like led up to you not being happy now. As you're like you kind of skip over the present and you go from past to future, right? And I think for me, to put it simply, it's like being an anti-perfectionist to me in a lot of ways means being present, because for me a lot of my perfectionism ends up being, I don't know, something that traps me in the past or traps me in the present, whether that's when I'm working on music production stuff or like in my life. And so it's a reminder for me in a lot of ways to just like to be present, you know? That's something I'm always practicing these days, in whatever ways I can. And I think it speaks to me most probably on the music side, only because I think so much of the context of Anti-Perfectionist for me has been around music. But yeah, since you asked that question, it certainly makes me think about how I've thought about it in the like context of the rest of my life, and I think that's where it sits.
That kind of makes sense too, thinking about it. Like just being in the now instead of just worrying about what's going to be or what was before. Because like for me, in a way, I kind of think of that way as well. It's really toxic for yourself just to think about what's gonna happen in the future, what happened in the past, you know? Because the way I look at it, in the past, everybody makes mistakes in their lives, you know. Nobody's perfect at the end of the day. And that's how we were able to learn and grow and being able to adapt and eventually improve on what we like to do on our crafts and all kinds of other things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But in a sense of the future, it really can worry us and make us really paranoid about things as well too. Because if you're over here trying to worry about, oh, I got to do this in this amount of time, or I only have this amount of time to do this, otherwise, how am I gonna be able to achieve what I want at this age, or certain things like that? But people tend to forget that it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because like, yeah, you look at it nowadays, you have all these younger artists and things that are way above our pay grade and doing things that we wish we could do at that age. But at the same time, though, that falls back into comparing ourselves to other people, and it doesn't really. That's where the perfectionism comes in. We're trying to compare ourselves to other people and trying to do things because in our eyes, oh, they're perfect, they're doing everything just fine. But where's that going to lead us at the end of the day? If we're trying to compare ourselves instead of just worrying about doing our own thing, it's going to lead to a downfall at some point. So staying in the present and being in the now, I feel like that really does help with just trying to worry about yourself and really just trying to, how am I going to say this? Just trying to worry about not really fixing your flaws, but just being comfortable with how you are and realizing that everybody has a different level of talent that of course not everybody's going to love, but not everybody's going to hate it either. Because even with those bigger
Mm.
artists out there that are younger than us and doing great things and out there, yeah, there's people out there that really don't care for what they do or really care for what they listen or what they do and all that things like that. But that applies to everybody at the end of the day. So trying to worry about the future, it shouldn't, the future shouldn't really matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, everyone's got their own journey, I think, and it's like, like to your point about comparing, it's like it's not helpful. It's like that's why it's nice seeing people talk about what's like it's people being present, right? Because you can see where people are in their part of the journey, right? And it's a lot easier to understand if someone's further along in their journey if you're seeing what they're doing right now, you know? And I think if you just look at someone and you think about the highlights of their past or whatever, it kind of can get romanticized. And then that's when you start comparing yourself and you're just like, well, my journey doesn't look like that. It's like you're kind of forgetting again that like everyone's on a different journey. And if you're not being present in your own journey, and you're kind of like taking a break, right? You're not moving forward in your own journey if you're like not being present, because then you're just like comparing to other people and where they are in the journey. It's like, man, that's like a lot of time spent not playing your own game, you know? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, because like you're comparing yourself, essentially you're not even making your own journey anymore after that. You're trying to copy somebody else's journey in hopes that you'll be able to achieve the same success as them, but that's not how it's going to work because you're not them. You're a whole different
Yeah,
person at the end of the day.
totally. Everyone's a different person. Like it's like experiences, circumstances, like everything is so different that it's like it's impossible for any two people to have the same journey. Like on paper, it could look like it if certain highlights of their journeys are brought forth, but really there's no way that they were the exact same journey. Like there's just no way. Like the struggles that each person went through, the highlights, the things that they felt were great, like and like bad or whatever. It's like all those things are like super unique. Like everyone's life experience is completely unique.
Yeah,
You know,
like
that's
for example, like you can even look at like some like Hollywood actors and things like that. Like top of my head, for example, like Keanu Reeves, for example, like he's probably known as like one of like the nicest people like in Hollywood, for example,
mhm.
because he's like really humble and down to earth, and like you'll see him like not even with like his own like private jets and things like that. Like he's casually like taking the subway with regular people and things like that. And it's just
Yeah.
like, why is he like this? And it's like you think about it, he had a way different upcoming than other people did that just had it easy just like that. Like for him, like I remember like looking into it, and he had like a rough upcoming. Like he had like a lot of different like um opportunities and things like that, and he took them. But at the same time, all of like the tragedies and things that happened in his life growing up, it really taught him how to be humble and not to let all of the big things destroy him as a person, you know.
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah,
where,
totally.
and that doesn't mean it's like, oh, you have to have like a tragic life event to be humble. It's just like, no, it's just like, yeah, you can learn from your own mistakes, but you can also learn from other people as well growing up.
Yeah,
And
totally.
yeah, just because you can learn from somebody doesn't mean you're copying from them at the end of the day, you know.
Yeah, I think it is important to like, talking about like not comparing. I think that's the distinction, right? It's like you're not comparing your journey to someone else's journey, but it's still helpful to like hear about other people's journeys because it can inform you on your own journey, Doesn't mean and you take bits and pieces of that, but it's like it doesn't mean like you can do that. You can take in from other people's journeys, learn from them without comparing yourself. It's like
Exactly.
you're still on your journey. It's just I don't know. Yeah.
What about you, Eyes? Like, I'm sure you had similar viewpoints when it came to anti-perfectionism, as you told us before. Especially when it comes to like comparing yourself to other people, and the fact that everybody has their own journey at the end of the day.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, you guys already said a lot of it. Like, what else
It's
can I
like we've
say?
talked about this before. It's no.
Eyes usually goes on tirades and rants for 20 minutes, and you guys took everything that he could say, and now he has no firepower. I mean, very well put, honestly. I think drawing comparisons to other people, you shouldn't compare yourself, but let them be inspirations and motivation, like motivators for you, and understand. I think a lot of people. What did you say, Bordy, earlier? Something about putting perfectionism on a pedestal. I think that kind of applies to your inspirations and the people you love to watch them do their craft and stuff like that. So you put them on a pedestal as well. Oftentimes, especially before the internet, where we could find out information, you thought that they were perfect. So you would hold them to
Mhm.
such a perfect standard and try to be what they are. And you lose sight of who you are sometimes. And then the only sight that you have on yourself is the fact that you're tarnished and damaged because you're not doing the same things that this person's doing or not as successful as what this person is, or so your only viewpoint is negative on yourself. So it's important to draw that distinction, understand that the people who do inspire you are definitely far from perfect, and you should be very grateful to be yourself because you have something to offer that they don't. And we're all humans by the end of the day. So do what you can to fight your demons, figure out every part of yourself. It takes a long time, trust me, but it's worth it. Put in the work to get to know yourself and become who you are and have fun doing it because it's not about the ending or the destination, but it's about the justifications that get you there, the joys of doing it. I kind of put a post on the social media about that the other day. So don't focus on the it or the perfection of it. Just do it. Life's too short.
1,000%.
Yeah. It's all about the journey, right? So cliche.
Exactly.
I think cliches are like.
That's why I tried
I
to
realize
change
you're trying
the
to
statement.
like.
I was trying to
Try
change
to
it
not
because I was like,
say the
oh, frick, I'm
words,
saying
yeah.
it. I'm saying it.
I was sitting here, I was like, is he going to say it again? Like,
Is he gonna say it? Like, it's like
Yeah, and I
just-
kind of did. Yes, yeah. I'll take the L on that. But
Just say the word destination and say journey.
Right. I was sitting, I was hearing it in my head. I was like, I know what he's
I
trying
know.
to do.
I was hearing it in my head too, so I was like, hold up, panic alarm. Say something else and not be cliche. Yeah. But sometimes cliches can be a very good thing, I guess. But
I feel like cliches
that
are
I
what they
probably
are.
made
It's
myself sound even
very
more
true.
dumb by having a big brain and not just saying the statement. I try to like say 25 different fancy words just to get around. Like, yo, bro, we all know what you're trying to say. Just
Trying to reinvent the phrase or something, you know?
yeah. I'm so epic, big brain.
No,
Do we have anybody
Good
ask any
stuff.
questions in the chat?
Yeah, Soundbites asked one.
Oh. Let me see what he asked. He
No,
said
my
right
head.
here, if universal income becomes a thing due to AI filling in jobs, empowered people can relax and be more.
Censored at said.
Yeah, it's censored for me too. He said, "Do you think we are entering another Renaissance period?"
I mean, I have a lot to say about this. I mean, I don't know.
I do too. It's
I
all
feel like we
kind of
might have.
packaged in. It's
I
a
feel like
very
yeah,
kind of controversial question.
it's kind of controversial.
But I
And
will.
I feel like we
be-
have different
I
views
will be.
potentially.
I will be happy to give a controversial answer, but I am curious as to what you guys have to say.
I mean, I think I'm somewhat informed by like my understanding of what's going on in tech, and I think based off of that, and I don't say informed as in like I know what's going on, but I'm saying like that's the context for my opinion and where I'm coming from, right? Like we hear, I don't know if you guys heard like people have talked about like the fourth industrial revolution, right? Like we are currently in the fourth industrial revolution, and I do believe that. The first
I've heard of
was
fourth turning. I've heard
and
something
I
along the lines of a
little
fourth turning. Yeah.
fourth turn. I think I've heard some stuff with like the turnings. I'm not sure if that's a different thing. If like the cycle of like
Yeah,
humanity
it's
kind
kind
of
of
keeps
it's kind of along the lines of that. as
So this
far as
is, I think this is different. Like I'm talking more about like the industrial revolutions we've had, right? Like fire, using steam, things like that. The internet, um, like uh, man, I
I
should
guess
know
like
what
social
all
media, for
even
example,
more.
would be another one. Another
Well,
term.
like, I mean, I need to. I should know this off the top of my head, right? But so it's like okay, so we're talking about humans. Like we're talking about like historically, like if you were to read in history books, like when we learn about world history, there were four industrial revolutions, right? So there was the first was when coal was discovered, like 1765, because that completely changed the way that humans lived on Earth, right? Now we had a source of
Right.
energy or whatever. Second industrial. This is not right. This is not what I know, man.
That's okay. It's okay. If you feel free to just kind of bullet point it.
Yeah. I don't even want to feel like a feel like a fraud. But that's why I like to preface it with not knowing what the hell I'm talking about. Don't listen to me. Don't take what I'm saying as like something. Okay, so like, okay, this is more like what I've, uh, yeah, like what I've understood, right? So it's like the first industrial revolution was mechanization. So that was like steam and like being able to like generate energy, right? Like that completely changed the game, right? We weren't doing manual labor. We like could like use steam to like power things and have machines. Then the second industrial revolution was mass production. So that was being able to like the Henry Ford thing, right? Like now we have assembly lines and we can like divide labor, and that created scale of economy. So that allows things to be mass produced now, right? It's not only like the machines can be done, we have a way to like actually mass produce things, which again, huge revolution in terms of like a renaissance of humanity because now like more goods are available, things are more readily available, whatever. And then third being like automation and information technology, right? Internet, stuff like that. Huge changeover in the way the world works,
Big
like
time.
just having
Absolutely.
the internet
Oh
period,
yeah.
right? And so the fourth industrial revolution that we're currently like living through, but what a lot of people say is like kind of putting all this together with like we have really advanced robotics with automation and stuff like that. We have all this stuff going on, innovations with data and AI. There's controversial terms, right? But it's like all this stuff is coalescing into what Soundbites is essentially saying, which is like we're looking like we're getting to this point of like again, like a lot of the things that we know are going to be automated in a way that like this is a huge disruption to the way that humans operate, what we can accomplish and what we do. And I think there's a very careful line that we have to like go like not cross, right? Because it's like we could I think we are at a point where like AI could develop so rapidly that like if it's left unchecked, we could automate like a lot of stuff going on, and people would be like not have jobs and stuff like that. But then doing that like in a non-sustainable way environmentally, and also doing it in a way where we're not checking it for our morality, because like I saw this guy post this thing about it. It's like whatever we build, like think about the algorithms we have, like on YouTube, all these algorithms were built by people. So like there's a lot of morality kind of tied into these algorithms and stuff like that. And we're going to easily kind of tie that into this next thing with AI and stuff. And that's risky because this guy was writing this thing about like humans as a species actually don't have a good definition of what morality is. And that is clear as
We
day
can't really
by
define.
what's going on with wars and like racism and all this stuff going on in the world. Like we don't know what morality is. It's different in every country and every place.
So
And
it's
it's
hard to
like,
define what it is. It's hard
how are
to
we going to
define what
define it?
consciousness is, even.
Exactly. And a machine, if we're building that system, like we're building that intelligence, how do we do that and build morality into it when we actually don't even have a good, like, unified definition of what morality is? And that's the danger because I think we are at a point where AI and all this stuff can develop to that point very quickly. And the only way to stop it from ramping up that quickly, like, is to put checks and balances in place. Because if we don't, then we're automatically putting all of our what we think everyone's got a different opinion on what morality is, right? But it's like
Yep.
it's obviously imperfect, and so now we're embedding that into our
And
AI
now it's getting
systems.
to a point where AI is giving itself its own code. So it's developing without our knowledge. And we have no idea how fast and rapid it is advancing.
And it's doing that with a foundation of what we think our morality is, or what not
Yeah,
we
but
as a
not every.
species,
Yep,
but
exactly. And
different groups of people.
not everybody
Yeah,
has a shared. Not everybody has a shared morality. So it gets very touchy because people have different viewpoints on things. So
exactly.
that's where AI is a little bit on the dangerous side.
It's very
I think.
dangerous, I think.
I think
I
so
think so
far
too.
you and I are agreeing, Bordy. Thus far, it sounds like we're agreeing, and this is where my answer would probably be a little differentiated. Universal basic income. Where is the question? If
Yeah,
universal basic income becomes a thing to do AI filling jobs, are we entering another renaissance period? And this is my answer. Universal basic income is a terrible idea. It kills all human creativity. It kills the drive. It kills the passion for humanity because everybody gets the same thing whether or not you're working, and there's no competition. All throughout our ancestry and history, we have always strived for competition. What were the first three things in the industrial revolutions? There was the steam was number one. that was thriving. That was doing something where we constantly create. The second one, what did you say it was? Was it automation, or was it mass
For mass
production?
production. Yeah.
Again, it was a way to thrive. Number three was automation, making things a lot easier for us to focus. Now we're possibly transferring into that fourth one, where we're giving everything that we've known as a species into artificial intelligence, which will then tell you how to think, tell you what to think, tell you what to do, so on and so forth. And it's easy to say that, yes, we will have more time to create because we won't have to do jobs. But think about how many people already currently, not I'm not calling anybody out here because I'm the same way. So it's all of us as human beings, how often we get complacent in doing nothing and becoming lazy because it takes work to build something and put something into it. So to have something constantly doing work for you and you have absolutely no obligation to do anything, it kills your productivity. And so
I
my answer
agree.
is yes, we would enter into a renaissance period because if if this hypothetical situation were a reality, humans, the ones who want to thrive and build, would be doing the revival of art. They would be constantly improving upon themselves, upon their own art, and competing with each other, because that is what human nature has been through so much of our DNA and so much of our studied time. So that's my thought on it.
And because of that, do you feel like now we're entering into that new period where we're starting to, I guess, the humans are starting to compete with the AI in a way because of how advanced it's starting to become, like, and how fast it's starting to grow more and more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's just side note, surface level. I am not a fan of AI. I like it for very simple things that are helpful to you, like adding, helping you master a song, or, helping you be able to add captions to a video. Tools that we can use to help speed up things. But the point to where it is taking human creativity, it's taking art, it's taking writing articles, it's taking coding, it's taking so many things that make us thrive, that build our brains and help us find who we really are inside. We're giving all of that away to artificial intelligence. Why? At what cost? What is the long term thing on? There are no long term studies, obviously, as to what AI is going to cause. But so far, it doesn't look like it's going to be good. Look at all the long term studies we have on social media and cell phones. A lot of it's pretty negative. Yeah, it's been a good help overall, but so many people have some sort of an addiction to a phone or to a social media and stuff like that. And again, it's not, I'm not calling anybody out because we all have our things to where we, sometimes struggle to control. But to have everything absolutely automated and doing everything for you, even creating. I even had a friend tell me she wrote a book and she told me it was done through AI. And I'm like, that's not writing a book.
No, it's
You
not.
gave it a prompt, had it write some things, and said that you wrote a book. That's not it.
And then just
So
slapping
it
your name on it.
takes,
You're pretty much like, you're taking the credit for all the work that the AI did, but it's not something that you would generally do. Like, yeah, you can look at it and it's like, oh, the AI wrote like it wrote a decent book or whatever, but if you're not writing it for yourself, then can you really call it yours? That, and it's just like the
mhm,
fact that it's not really as passionate as you would want it to be if you just gave it to an AI and it can just throw something together that sounds good enough, you know?
yes, yeah. Bordy, is that something where were the points where you disagreed, or were we kind of on
And
the
I
same
I
page?
think that's where like I know where we disagree. Like not maybe not disagree because I agree with you. I think that it's not so black and white though, is kind of what I would say.
That's
Because I
always a
think
gray area. Yeah,
there's
it's
always a
always
gray
a gray
area. So
area.
I think like in a lot of ways, if we think about um, prompting as a skill and prompting as a art form almost, I think that's something that's still developing. Because the reality is I don't think generative AI, like what we're talking about, like writing a book or whatever, like ChatGPT, like I don't think it's at that point yet where like you can just be like, write me a book about this and all like the end to like kind of create parameters. Like
Mhm.
someone who's better at prompting is probably going to get a better quality book out
Exactly.
of AI, right?
Yes.
And so it
But
is there is a skill level to prompting. And I'll just say this, like a similar thing if we think about like music, right? It's like it's not the same thing, but it's like being able to mix and master things as a DJ and stuff like that, like, or even as a music producer who doesn't go and learn every instrument, these are like things that we now have access to. And does that make you less of a musician or less of a music producer because you didn't learn all 27 different instruments that are on your track and can play the drums and like have all these things? You know, it's like it's like a different level of like it's like a kind of something I struggle with even with sampling, right? It's like
mhm,
that like I would always think like I didn't want to use samples because it's like then I'm like kind of cheating, right? And then like in some ways it is, but it's like it's not like I like there's well there are AI tools now where you can just have it like Splice will automatically generate samples,
yeah,
repitch them, whatever, right? And stuff like that. And so then it's like it's a different kind of skill, right? It's like maybe it's not musicianship. It shouldn't be called musicianship because you're not a musician playing instruments, but it's kind of a form of curation. It's like sample curation because you're still using your ear to kind of like click through and be like, okay, that's expressing what I'm feeling. And like I think that is still a creative exercise. Like I saw this interesting post by Jacob Collier. He was talking about like people who aren't musicians think that they are, or like people that like aren't like doing things creatively in music, like they don't consider themselves creative. And he made the argument that like when you are sitting there in silence and you decide you want to listen to some music and you open up your Spotify and you're like, what do I want to listen to? Do I want to listen to like this artist? Oh, I want to listen to like this band. I want to listen to Blink 182 right now. Like that's actually a creative process because you're taking a feeling that you have within you and you're trying to figure out how do I feel right now? And that
mhm,
feeling gets expressed in what artists you search for, what playlists you decide to listen to. Because if you're feeling like some type of way where you're like happy and like excited, like I don't think you're gonna put on some super depressing like
Hell no.
music, right? You want to put on music usually that kind of like expresses how you feel. And I thought that was a good way to like think about like people who aren't creative in the traditional sense that we think of, like, oh, you're a creative music person, like that means you make music and you like play an instrument or you produce stuff or whatever. It's like that was an interesting perspective. It's like you could be creative just by like wanting to listen to music because you're expressing yourself in that way. And I guess the parallel I'm making is I think it's a similar thing with with generative AI, right? Is I think there's going to be some level of like creativity through prompting, like the way that like an art piece comes out or whatever, or like some piece of text comes out is going to be creatively expressed through the way that that person prompts. Um, and I think that that'll be its own thing. But there's a whole other set of things to unpack there. Like that's why I think it's a gray area because I agree with you too because like I've seen a lot of articles too about like the problem with it with generative AI is it's being trained. The models are being trained off of existing art, right? And so if you express yourself through prompting in some specific way, the computer's just a computer. The AI knows how to tie that back to stuff that exists already. It's very easy to then like really uh what is it like steal something, like truly steal something, right? The AI has no idea it's stealing that thing. It's just you happen to prompt so well, so similarly to something it was trained on that now it's giving you a picture that's actually like straight up what's the word I'm looking for? Like copyright stolen, you know, like
Yeah.
it's just straight up plagiarized, right? It's like it's very easy to have something be completely plagiarized. I think that's more of a problem with the technology and the models that they're being trained on. But I don't know. That's my 2 cents on prompting as an art form. I guess is what I would say.
um,
yeah.
I did want to go
What do you
off on
think,
like
prompting?
what you said before about when you're talking about what Jacob Collier said about how music it's really expressive in a way and it can really tie into multiple different people. And like nowadays you have all the different subgenres of music and different feelings of music that can really it can really relate to almost anybody nowadays if you think about it. And And that's why it's really great that everybody has different genres of music that they can personally relate to on a different level. And when it comes to AI, I don't think a lot of AI can really generate that up to like a true personal feel, you know? It can get like a general idea of it, but not really up to that point where an artist can truly replicate a feeling of music when it comes for that certain person, you know what I mean? And when it comes to that, it's like I literally just had a brain fart. No, but when it comes to AI, like I remember seeing a Spotify playlist that somebody had mentioned, and they made it, and it was literally called all of these songs on this playlist sound the same, and it was a bunch of different AI generated songs on Spotify, and they all had different names by different artists. But if you clicked on them and tried to listen to like 5 different songs, they were all literally the exact same song. And was it generated well and things like that? Like, was the song made well? Not really. Like, it just seemed like it was just like a bunch of different instruments just like thrown in there. Like the cymbal was like offbeat and things like that, and like the snare was just like all over the place. And I was sitting there listening. I was just like, "What is this? What am I listening to right now?" Like, and I was like, "Okay, this is like AI generated too." Like at the end of the day, and like, it was funny enough. There was like 20 or 30 different songs on that playlist, and all of them were the exact same song, but they all had different names slapped on them. And that made me just like raise a question in my eye, like how far like can AI really like take a certain song, like depending on like the prompt that you give it and things like that, you know? But you have to go back to the concept of AI in general, like when it comes to music or like art and things like that. Like, yeah, certainly there's like different types of AI art that like apps out there that can generate AI art for you depending on the prompt that you give it. And some of them can be more specific than others and things like that. And I think I told you before, Eyes, like I've used AI to generate like an album cover, or not an album cover, like a cover for like a single and things like that before. And like I did it for Dr. PC. Like that was the AI generated cover of like a John Coltrane picture that I found, and I thought it was actually really neat and actually worked out. But I was like, I didn't want to do that anymore because like I was just taking this person's picture and I was just made like an AI form out of it or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, and I can understand how some people think like, oh, AI is really good for like generating art and things like that, but it loses its like general, like just compassion and general passion. It's not there compared to what an artist can actually draw at the end of the day, you know? Like an artist, they put all to work into just drawing this and then making this, and then once they finish it, there's actual meaning behind it, you know? Instead of just AI, oh, I want you to do something like this and this, and AI just, oh, throw something together, but there's no meaning or anything behind it, you know? So it's like to answer the question, like, I feel like AI can be useful in some aspects, but as for all of them, definitely not. Definitely not, because it takes away from the meaning behind a certain form of art that AI can just throw out there and just like really just take credit away from somebody else that really took the time and the passion to make something. AI can just do it like in 5 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And for the argument against if you play a virtual instrument and you only know how to play, if you know how to play piano, but you use it to play guitar or drums and stuff like that, does that make you any lesser of a musician? Absolutely not.
No.
If you use AI to create music, does that make you any less of a musician? Absolutely. The difference here is if you are creating stuff with virtual instruments, you know how they're supposed to sound, and you put time into studying how they're actually able to be realistically played, you can take the time and go into learning it. If you type in a prompt into AI and have no idea what you're doing with music and let AI create it for you, and you don't know how to create it yourself, yeah, it makes you far less of a musician. If you know how to virtually play an instrument and then go out of your way to understand that you can learn that, there you go. Yeah, you're not any less of a musician. If you have no idea on the concept of music, no idea on how to do it, and can't figure out, even if you go out of your way to figure out how to create it and you don't understand theory and it doesn't catch on to you and you use AI, yes, you're less of a musician. That's my opinion on that.
I agree with you. I mean, I think
I do
I
too.
made the distinction of like, I don't know if you heard what I was saying. It was just like I think create the distinction between musicianship and creativity, right? Like
Yeah,
I think
very true.
prompting is still a form of creative expression, or it can be considered an art form at some point when, like, I think it can be. Like if you're, yeah, less of a musician, I would even argue that you're not a musician at all. If you're using AI to produce music, like you're not a musician at all. Like you're not using any sort of musicianship. Are you using creativity? Possibly. You know, maybe not definitively yes, but possibly. You know, that's like,
Yeah.
but you know, I think it's that's why there's a scale. Like I agree with you 100%. Like, and that's kind of what I've had to kind of deal with like sampling, right? It's just like it's like I don't know that I would consider myself a musician if I'm building a track strictly off of splice samples. Would I still consider myself expressing myself creatively? Yes. You know, like
Hmm.
I think being a musician and being a creative person, like in the realm of with doing something with music, I think they're like separate things. And like the beauty of being a musician is that you kind of get to you're doing both, right?
Yeah.
You're inherently being creative, but you're also a musician because you're using a skill, like to your point, like you're using a skill to like create that, not
Yes.
just like, the prompting is maybe more of a creative art in terms of language and understanding of how to speak to an artificial intelligence, right? Like that's a like writing is an art also, right? But it's separating that from music, I think, is very important. Like if you're
Yeah.
using AI to make music,
It makes
you are
you.
not
It
doing
makes you.
music.
It makes you the person asking for the food. It doesn't make you the chef.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good analogy.
Luna says, "Here's a question." Or Prominent, did you have something to add to that? I'm
No, no,
sorry.
we're
Do the current flaws of AI utilization increase or decrease the value of human creation, or is that a misplaced concern to begin with?
I feel like it
I
certainly decreases it for sure.
I
I
think it
think
can.
I think it AI utilization. Well, Solar's saying things like pitch correction, quantization, so on and so forth. He says those are technically considered AI. If that's true, I would consider it actually increases the value of human creation because you can get things done at a far more quick pace with using AI as tools, not as a replacement for creativity. It
Yeah,
is in
not as using
addition
it
to
as like
your
a clutch and
creativity.
things like that.
Otherwise, you're going to be limited by trying to get that perfect take right on time, right in key. That's how I used to record before I had tools. And it does take a lot longer. It does hinder your creativity because it turns into a chore. So
Yeah, it's like
again,
the levels
tools,
Yeah.
as a tool.
tools, when they're used as tools to help you and to help, you know, add to your repertoire, making things easier, I'm fine with that. But to completely take over, give it a prompt, and then say that you wrote it and that you're a musician, I disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like very similar to what I was saying about like the tools are getting better and AI is just another tool. And if it's used in that way, it unlocks creativity. Like being a music producer like we are, like we're using tools that are unlocking our creativity. Imagine if you were like you only play piano, you're like, damn, I wanna like get a drum beat on this. Well shit, I better go buy some drums. I better like start learning how to play drums right now. Like what a huge barrier to entry. Like, oh, I can't have drums on my track. I don't actually know how to play drums and I don't own a drum set. Like that's that how like limiting is that for your creativity. And I think AI is kind of the same way, but it's like gotten more refined now. In that way. I think yeah, it's but it is tricky because on the question being does it value or devalue, like I'm of the opinion that there's gonna kind of maybe be a divergence of types of value for pieces of art.
Mm-hmm.
Like I almost think AI will be its own kind of
Thing.
it'll
Absolutely.
have its own place. Like people will like appreciate AI art, And like
Yes.
maybe the thing I'm talking about with like prompting, like people are going to prompt better than other people, and their AI generated art is going to be better than other people's AI generated art, and that's going to be its own thing. But I don't think it's comparable to people organically making art. Like I think they're completely separate
And that
things,
makes me think of vinyl
Yeah, it's
purists.
true.
and that's the problem, right? That's the problem is when those things cross over and people are trying to, if you're making AI art and you're trying to pass it off as real art, then yeah, you're actually trying to devalue other people's art, I feel like, but it's
Hmm.
like the people
Absolutely.
who appreciate
True.
AI art are probably going to more likely appreciate the creativity of how they got there with their prompting skills and whatever model and the training that's been done to get to that point. Whereas
That's
like
true.
someone who values an organic artist, they probably value like the things that go along with that, like the skills that they've gained, the like talent that this person has, the creative vision they have, and whatever like practice they've had doing this stuff. Like I think it's kind of similar to what we were talking about with like musicians these days, right? And like connecting to people as artists beyond just their music. It's like you connect to the person, and there's a lot of people that value that. And so I don't think AI really devalues that unless people are trying to like get into that, like trying to pass off and get in that space. Like I'm a real musician. Check out this song I made. Like shh, I didn't use AI. It's like I feel like they're like different things in one way.
And like, there's so much in the EDM scene. You just brought up a point right there. Like, shh, I used AI. There are so many, like, there's so much friction be for the people who use ghost producers. Imagine what it's going to be when people start using AI producers. It's going to be another entire different kind of argument thing. You
Yeah,
know,
because I feel like that would bring in the argument in terms of like, oh, you actually made the song, but did you actually like mix it and master it yourself? No, I used AI for all that stuff. And then that'll bring up the debate whether on like you actually made the song or not, or did AI make the song and you just gave it a prompt at the end of the day. It
Mhm.
just I feel like that would tie
It's
back
like
into that debate again.
because I think I saw this video a long time ago, like DJ Khaled explaining what he does as a producer, right? And it's like I think it's a good example for like production in general can mean a lot of different things, right? Like DJ Khaled as a producer, he's not making any beats, he's not really doing anything as far as the music, but like his ability to get certain artists from different major record labels on the same track somehow, that's
Yeah.
the challenge. Is like you need to be very well connected and very persuasive to all these stupid execs that like are trying to argue with each other about how much money their artist is going to make over this artist when they release this song, or who how that thing's going to be split. Like that's kind of what he's doing as a producer, is he's getting the pieces together to make a hit song, but he's not actually like doing any of the musical stuff. And I think in some ways it's kind of similar to what we're talking about with like AI, right? It's like he's kind of like, but for him that's like more of a people skill, like prompting people within the industry to get to this end product of a song. But it's like, yeah, I don't we shouldn't respect him for like his musicianship and his ability to make a great song like that. But what we can appreciate is like, oh, this guy's got some balls to go around and like try to get Justin Bieber on the same track as like
Like
Migos, or yeah, no,
T-Pain or
whatever.
something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like that can't happen naturally, even if those two dudes wanted to work together. Like there's a like at that level, I think there's not a lot of opportunity without like a lot of handshakes.
Right, right. Because like when it
Uh,
comes to like DJ Khaled, like he's more on the lines of being able to like network, and he's on the business side of things, and like getting, like you said, he's getting
yeah,
all these people together. But is he actually like producing the whole song? Like,
yeah. He's got one recording of him going like DJ Khaled, another one, and he just sends that
Another one.
sample,
and that's
sends
it.
that
Like,
sample.
there you go.
Doesn't even have to record that again.
Yeah. Well, it's a pretty lively discussion.
Oh
I
hell yes, it
mean,
was.
It's
there,
fun.
you know, you want to close this one up, Prominent, or do you want to have some more thoughts on it? What are you thinking?
Um,
'Cause if,
no, I think said my 2 cents about it and everything. So
Okay. And I know there are many chats in there discussing, arguments, counterpoints, and stuff like that. And
I can't wait to
apologies
read
that
these.
we don't get to all of them because it's quite a lengthy discussion for everybody, and we'd be here for another 4 hours probably. But
yeah.
thank you for keeping it. Thank you for keeping it respectful to us and amongst yourselves. And it's always one of the latter chats I just responded to with bars is Solars saying, I try to learn, and that is why I like these types of conversations. More in depth, he said, don't get me wrong, AI scares me, but I usually fear what I don't understand. I try to learn, and that is why I like these types of conversations. And when you can keep a conversation like this, where it's borderline political, and we're not trying to go political here, when we can keep it civil and everybody can have an opinion and not bash each other for that opinion, it's a very, very good, productive conversation. And I hope the things that I said, Prominent said, Bordy said, and all of you, each other in chat have said, is going to be a little bit of a thought-provoking thing since this is so new for all of us, and it's not an immediate turn of character for anybody. So
Right.
again, thank you for keeping it lively. Thank you for keeping it respectful, and thank you for the conversation. It was pretty rock solid for me, but I'll let you guys close off your thoughts with that too.
Of course.
Yeah,
And it's like what
probably
Figure
close
said.
with
He
it,
even
okay.
said when people become complacent, that's when we should fear, TBH.
Yes. Yeah.
100%.
100%. Like, I think I could speak for all of us that we're sharing our opinions, sharing our thoughts, and things like that. But none of us claim to know everything. None of us claim that what our opinion is the fact or whatever it is. Like that, and that's
Right.
what great discourse is like coming to a conversation with what your knowledge and context is of the situation, and then also being curious to learn about
Yeah.
everybody else's context and experience to try to continually reform. And I think that's what
And
good discourse is.
it's important. It's important to have an opinion and be able to share that opinion. And if you're called out to be wrong or something, be open-minded. But
Hmm.
it's better to actually have a really strong opinion about something rather than being shaky and trying to make friends all the time. Sometimes you do have to have an opinion, and it's okay. This is how we grow. This is how we learn
Yeah.
together and grow as humanity.
Exactly.
You know, so it's all about the respectful conversations and good times.
My lady.
I'm a lady.
Lady.
I was gonna say something like that, but I was like, nah, but
Yes,
well,
but
shoot.
this has been a really fun another episode. Of course, Boy to being a great OG guest as always, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and it's super cool to just like chat and hang out with y'all.
Yeah, I know,
You
right?
know, in our notes that we have for the show, we did indicate that AI is a touchy subject, and I'm glad we were able to just face it and talk about it because it was a really, really good discussion.
Yeah, it didn't turn into
Honestly.
like a heated debate or anything. We were just in here just casually just sharing our own opinions about it.
Exactly.
And
You
seeing how
guys
the
can
chat blew
follow.
up about it, and it's like everybody had something to say about AI, which is honestly
I
really
know.
great.
I know.
Yeah,
You guys
well,
can
there's a
follow
lot going on.
Bordy over at his Spotify, over at his Twitch, as well as the Instagram. I just put the links in chat, so feel free to check him out there. And Prominent, I'm sorry I interrupted. Go
Oh,
ahead.
you're good. You're good, man. But yeah, this has been such a pleasure, boy. It's always great hanging out with you and talking to you, man. And such a
I
pleasure for
know I
you to
missed
be
you,
Likewise.
on the
dude.
show, man. This is so much
I
fun.
I missed you, homie.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I
I've
miss you guys too.
missed,
I really.
miss you.
Yeah, I've missed you so
Yeah.
much too. I can't wait until you started getting back into your hang of things and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
I'm
know what day
actively
you'll be
working on
streaming? Do you know what day you'll be streaming? Is it on one of prominent and
it. I mean,
prominence
I'll
in my off
definitely.
days?
I don't know yet. I think from a practical perspective, for me, probably like middle of the week's gonna make the most sense, like either a Wednesday or a Thursday. And I think based off of how things were going for me before, it's probably gonna be sometime earlier. I know that's a popular decision probably for all of my East Coast and Midwest friends. But so I don't know. I think the reality is if I go back to streaming, which I hope to do starting next month, I think it's gonna have to be 1 hour, maybe 2 hours once a week.
That's fine.
in the middle of
That's
the week.
understandable.
So,
Middle of the week's great for me. Middle of the week is great for me.
Yeah,
I
especially
can
for
do
me
that.
since like transitioning with my new job and stuff, I'll be working more afternoons, so I'll definitely be able to catch your streams more often this time, and not have to
yeah.
worry about like waking up super early and all that stuff.
Yeah, no worries. And I mean, I think like that's the whole reason I've like said like I think the Discord's so awesome. I'm so glad to be able to be in there and engage with everybody because yeah, the reality is like I'd love to be everywhere all the time. I think we all feel the same way, but it's like we can't always, and the Discord gives us that opportunity kind of to still
Yes.
stay connected without, you know.
Yep, and the Discord's there if anybody wants to share their music, share their music tastes, share some samples, stuff like that. Join in on a good, fun conversation. Keep it always fun, of course. Please, respectfully.
Yeah. And then one thing I
You
did
know
want
what
to
I'm
say, like just like a random side note, I still remember the day when this was not too long before you moved out of California and went to Florida. And I remember you were like, I need to go see Bordy before this happens. I remember you like taking a picture with him and everything. I was like, oh shit! Like,
Yeah. I do exist. So does Forty. We exist outside of the screen.
It's like they're both in
Yeah.
person at the same time. Like,
And
oh, shit, this
honestly,
hyped me up so
meeting
much.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Bordy in person is the exact same as he is on stream. Just very pleasant, very fun. It's actually even more fun in real life. It's just we were able to really dialogue very
Yeah.
well.
Yeah,
So.
I think we're definitely just being ourselves as much as possible, you know, and I think it comes through.
Yep, absolutely.
Way to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I love this community, man.
Well, Bor, do you have any final things for the podcast until you become a guest on the next episode sometime or a future episode, hopefully?
He said
Yeah,
the next episode.
in the next episode. Hold up. I'm down. I don't know when, but yeah, I'd certainly be down. I have no closing thoughts other than this was a lot of fun. I'm glad we were able to do this and get together. I know there was a little bit of like back and forth for a while where I was like couldn't commit to it, and I think like for those of you guys that don't know, we scheduled this almost 2 months in advance. So almost like a month and a half in
something like
advance.
that.
Yeah, it's been quite some time
because my schedule is pretty rough. Like it's hard for me. So I think I appreciate you guys wanting me to be on the podcast enough that you were trying to work with my schedule, get it booked out ahead of time, and I'm glad that we were able to make it work. And
absolutely, me too.
Yeah,
thank you
really fun.
Genuinely for cutting out the time and making the time for it, I should say. But thank you for being here. I did. I'm so happy to see you. Can't wait for more stuff. Seeing your streams again, and I'm gonna be elated.
Yeah, I'll be back soon.
Good. I hope so. Well, if you guys, anybody who doesn't know me or anybody new into the podcast or stream, my name is Eyes. It's a pleasure to have you guys here. I am on Spotify, YouTube, X/Twitter, and Instagram. My links are there. And my Twitch is I the artist. There. There you go. You guys feel free to follow there, and we'll join on some more lively discussions. Thank you for being here with the show tonight. Prominent, close us out, baby.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys so much for hanging out with another episode of the Antiperfectionist Podcast. And of course, you guys can follow me as well on my socials and everything as well. And if anything, what we're going to do now for the rest of the evening is just chill out in here in the Jazz Lounge Journey for a little bit longer. We're not going to just abruptly just end things here. But of course, this episode was so much fun. Be able to talk to you guys as always. Being able to Eyes being a lovely co-host, of course.
Thank you.
And having Bordy on here as well. It's just so amazing. And now what we're gonna do here is just like everybody, all of us, we're gonna sit here and just take a break for a little bit and just stand up and stretch because we all need to, of course. Yeah.
May I announce the next month's guest?
You may.
Do you wanna... Okay. The next podcast will be at the end of April. And our next guest planned is the old man Matthew. So I'm very much looking forward to having him in here as well.
I know, I can't wait because he's freaking awesome.
And then we'll get this video. I'll download the VOD from Prominent's page after he's done streaming, and then I'll get it up on YouTube as soon as I can.
of course. And I'll
Thank you guys for
link
being here.
the video to my channel as well. That way everybody has like another way to access it.
Oh yeah, perfect. Good deal.
Yeah, because I already have like a playlist on my channel of like all the episodes of the Anti-Perfectionist Podcast. So as soon as you upload it, it's gonna get added to that playlist.
Nice.
Heck yeah, boy. That's great.
Let's go.
So if you guys don't have anything else to say, we're gonna go ahead and head out of here, and then, well, I'll go ahead and head on my own and finish out the stream and all that stuff. So.
All right,
Perfect.
good deal. Thanks for hosting, and I'll just be kicking and stream with you, Bordy. Bless as always, man. Well, let's hit each other up here soon.
Yeah, for sure. This isn't the last time.
Oh, definitely not.
Good night, everybody.
All right, peace out, you guys.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of the Anti-Perfectionist Podcast. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit like, send a comment down below, as well as hit subscribe. The links for the hosts and the guest will be in the description below. I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. Have a good one.